Hello, everybody. This is James Diboe, Discovering, dedicated to original peoples. As always, we got special guests on today. We got Raz Congo, Patrick Graham, Curtis Watts. How you doing, my brother?
Yeah,
Everyone,
Bless up,
man.
James.
welcome.
Everybody
This
good, man.
this topic anyway is back to the roots, and we maybe have more guests coming on shortly, but we're gonna make a start.
Mm.
So the first thing is back to the roots now. I'll just give a brief introduction to myself. My father's side Nigerian. We were told basically about our tribe, where we're from, Delta State. Very quite basic. It wasn't really too deep into the things until later on I started to learn more, but just on a basic level.
Mm.
And on my mum's side, it's basically Caribbean, which is, relating to a lot of other people who went through the transatlantic slave trade. Watching roots sit to get the first understanding of the transatlantic slave trade, and then things came after that. So that's my quick introduction anyway. I'm going to move to Raz Congo now. Give us a little brief introduction to African history
Yeah.
and back to the roots, brother.
Okay. Well, like yourself, I have we're all African, and I see the whole world as Africa.
Yeah,
Planet Africa. But like in terms of like narrowing things down, I had like a so-called Caribbean West Indian. Although I'm not really into them titles, but we'll talk about that another time. And
yeah,
I had a direct link with Africa through my grandfather. So that link was always there. Like my grandfather was with an Irish woman, married an Irish woman, but he never let go of his African roots, his African identity. So when
okay,
we used to go and visit him on Sundays, we got food, we got African food, and we got like the African culture too. We made sure that he inculcated us with the African culture. He was Nigeria like himself, but Yoruba from the
all right.
Yoruba land. You know what I mean? So
Mm,
that's where I got it from. And like in the food would be very hot. I remember like it was very hot. It was like trials and tribulations to eat it. But now I can't eat food without pepper.
Yeah, that's
You
the
know?
Scotch
yeah,
bonnet, that in it, man.
Yeah, yeah.
Scotch bonnet, dread.
yeah. All right, Patrick, gives a little introduction to the your Africanness, back to the roots. From just give us a brief one from the beginning, how it
Yeah,
all started.
in brief, really, basically,
Mm.
finding my African roots was basically exactly that. I had to
Mm,
find that for myself. Yeah, I wasn't
yeah,
brought up on that through societal indoctrination.
yeah,
It turned you away from Africa. Yeah,
yeah.
from down to yeah, through society's indoctrination turned you away from Africa. It's only when I come mid to late teens, well, mid teens, 16 onwards, where I started to then um, learn more. Well, not even learn more, started to learn the truth
Yeah.
about not only African roots, but about great civilizations that had existed there. And then over the years, I've tried my best to learn, as much as I can. And that for me made that connection, what I mean, which is now embedded in me, what I mean, to know where you come from, because being from Caribbean parents, Jamaica in particular, history has been stolen because wherever, which part of, more than likely, because most Jamaicans emanate from certain parts of West Africa, but exactly where, like used to have been able to name Nigeria as a direct connection. I couldn't do that. All I can do is name a giant
Mhm.
geographical location of West Africa
Mhm.
because that history is being stolen, and
Mhm.
chances are I'll never ever know
For real.
which part of
Yeah.
West Africa that my family really originates from.
All right. Well, Curtis, anyway, give us a little introduction to yourself on back to the roots, when you first understood about Africa. And it doesn't have to be where you got deeply into, just from the basic standpoint.
Mm. Well, remember we were talking about the Ejo
Oh, yeah, it's my
and then
tribe. Yeah,
and
yeah.
Paul Agoro, and we were talking about how we put the pieces projection map on the little power station on Granby, and then they
Okay.
did the heroes and sheroes so that no one would like, no one like every time someone moved it out of the house, and then the corrugated iron would get curled up, and kids would
Mm,
go in and make a den out of it.
yeah,
And that was an amazing project, man, but that was needed on Granby Street at that time.
yeah,
You know what I mean? To have like Martin Luther King up there, and you got Mary Seacole. I think I did the Mary Seacole one actually because I painted one of them
yeah.
myself, and I
Mm,
put ISIS at the top of it. That'll be they're all in the pub in the Grapes. One of
Okay,
them
I used
went
to go there.
missing. I mean, Michelle Charters, before she went into the comeback. What was that? Was it Novas, that building in town, the red brick one?
I'm not too sure. Not too sure.
Yeah, well,
Yeah.
they did an art exhibition, and then they asked me to get Paul and Anna's pictures up in the art exhibition, and one of them went missing. And I just felt terrible about it. It wasn't my fault. Do you know what I mean? But
Yeah.
I mean, I just set it up. Do you know what I'm
Yeah.
saying? And because I was working with the biennial as well at the time, and they have like international curators for like what art's gonna like what the artistic output for Liverpool is.
Yeah.
So I took a load of people from all these different countries round to the Grapes, and we all had a bevy, and and yeah, so I was peeved about that because I don't know what happened to that painting. And I
Okay.
felt bad because I'd been the middleman sort of
Yeah.
thing. Do you know what I mean? So, but other than that, that was that really positive vibe. I mean, that was the 90s and that was when it was peaking, wasn't it? Do you know what I mean?
Yeah.
So that
Yeah.
was yeah, that was really important. That project, I think it did a lot for people and it stopped people vandalizing the houses and stuff like that, which was amazing. Need
Yeah.
more of that. But the one about the one with the curators, I focused on Leroy Cooper's work as well, mostly when I spoke
Okay.
to the curators about it. Like I said,
Yeah.
we all had a little
Uh,
beer in the Grapes.
Now, where's another thing I want to ask you is, why don't people visit Africa, for example? I mean, it's getting a bit better. We understand that, Ghana's opened it up for, well, they started with Black Americans and then there's some other people of the diaspora that moved to Ghana. Africa's it's sort of becoming less stereotype, but it's not quite fully there. And going back into the years, people would rather travel to Europe, maybe America, maybe the Caribbean. Just give us some introduction, Raz, to why you think that a lot of people weren't traveling to Africa, and even still, they're not quite fully there yet.
I think the biggest thing is like how our self-image has been warped by a succession of stolen identity, stolen culture, stolen land, complete disenfranchisement and disconnection to our true selves. So, like, a lot of it is like, even, the image, it's a constant assault on our senses through the education system, entertainment, all of this. So, there's this thing where we find, I say we, as in like the collective in the Africa, even Africa,
Mm.
uh, the diaspora, because they want us to die aspora. That was always
It's
that
not.
was always the thing. So
That's not what
like,
it means, though.
no,
I
I
know,
know,
I
but
know, like people dissect all these words and stuff, but
I'm, I'm
it
I
doesn't
have to be
really.
who I am, Curtis. I like it. You mightn't like it. You don't
It's
do it.
not
I
about
do.
liking it. I'm just saying when people use those weird things, you know what
I
I
don't
mean?
want to
It's a bit.
digress. I use these weird
Mm,
things because I've been doing it since I could talk, and it's worked for me. Yeah.
mm.
So yeah, that's how I'm going to drop it. You want us to die as poorer. So the greatest riches is to know who you are. So that's been taken away, and we've invested in it. We've learned to invest in it, right? We buy into that model of self hatred. A lot of us do that. So therefore, to reconnect with Africa can be difficult for a lot of people. It really can be, and the only way to get that connection is to have that that will to, what I mean, to generate that appreciation and that love for where you're coming from, and then it works, and then you will, you know go for it. But a lot of people, some people would connect with Africa, say in the Caribbean. Some people may see them as mad people. Some people may say, I ain't no damn African, but they look like they've never left Africa, the people who are saying it. So it's about consciousness and awareness, really,
Yeah.
and how that fight against our senses has been in place since 1492. You know what I mean?
Yeah. All
In the
right.
modern sense,
Yeah, man.
Yeah.
Yeah, Patrick. Give us your little views on this same topic. Like, why do you think people don't actually go to Africa? And you know,
Oh yeah, it's the same old story of just following on from what Nixon just said, it's the same old story of that, that disconnect, indoctrination, social engineer to self-hate, the imagery that was projected in just about every sphere, basically. From my time growing up, from whether you opened a book, there was nothing positive in there. The imagery on television, anything to do with Africa was portrayed basically as like primitive, backward, stupid, all them things.
Savage.
Only knowing about slavery, you know what I mean? And like, that's a true part of world history. But who wants to only know about that and be associated with that? So, the almost the natural thing is to distance yourself from that, and you don't want to be a part of that. You know what I mean? So, all these things have been going on for a long time. It's still very prevalent now. It's not like it's gone away, and we're talking about things of the past, that these negative portrayals of Africa no longer exist. More and more people are opening up their consciousness and realizing, no, there's more positiveness to your direct heritage to Africa than there is anything negative, and are being, I'll use the word proud, but rather than proud, dignified is the better word, yeah, because pride before the fall type of thing. But being dignified with that association of a African heritage, rather than feeling undignified by it and feeling it's some type of stigma or a badge of dishonor. People now, a lot more people are starting to wear that with a badge of honor, because it is honorable to know that's your heritage, and so on. So it's still an ongoing battle. You know what I mean? There's still a lot of, because the modern day battle, just to sum up quickly, because we can maybe explore this a bit more. The modern day battle now is, we grew up describing ourselves as black. Most people grew up describing ourselves as black. Now they have all these other terms where people say people of color, black and brown people, this and that. I'm not black, I'm mixed race, I'm this and that. And I'm not saying that's wrong or they shouldn't do, but there was an identity, a group identity, and that's being watered down now. And by being watered down, people are now, as people are making that connect with Africa, the society and the systems in place to engineer the disconnect are realizing that, and they're coming with a new way to tackle that and to create that disconnect again. So that's a big issue.
All right. Okay. Yeah. So Curtis, give us your little view anyway of like why you think people don't go to Africa, and it's not a popular destination unlike a lot of other destinations.
Yeah, like I said last time, I think that's because of the images that have been shown, especially during the 1980s. When the Ethiopian war in Eritrea was going on, and there was starvation, the people deliberately starving each other and stuff like that. And
Yeah.
that which triggered Band-Aid, which we spoke about last time. You know what I mean? There won't be snow in Africa this Christmas time. There's no mountains in Africa with any snow peaks, apparently, according to Band-Aid. Do you know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
It's just it. And then that lyric always bugged me. I think I mentioned it last time. So tonight, thank God it's them instead of you. That's positive, isn't it? That's so positive. Wow. Do you know what I mean? It
Yeah.
just shows you the hypocrisy, man. Do you get me? Can I just
Yeah.
ask a question to everybody, right? How do you know, like when people say black on black and this kind of thing, and when you think about it, like people weren't necessarily united across all of Africa, or all of sub-Saharan Africa, I should say specifically. Do you know what I mean? Because tribes were against tribes and stuff like that, man. And a lot of that was utilized by, the Europeans when they went over there, starting with the Dutch and the Portuguese.
Well, we'll get back into that in a minute because
Yeah.
it'll open
But I
up
just
another
want to know
can
what
of
other people
worms.
think about where do
We
you
will.
see the
No,
stuff?
we will come to that, but I'm just going
Yeah.
to introduce Edison now.
Mm.
Edison
Thanks,
Abanja,
Vince.
that's the name, isn't it?
Agbanti,
Yeah,
yes.
yeah.
So,
Welcome on anyway, and
thank you.
Ancestral Essence.
Yeah.
Give us a little introduction to. I know your roots is Nigeria, but just give us a little introduction to knowing about Africa, which obviously you've known probably since you've been born, and just give us a little brief introduction to why you think people don't go to Africa.
A couple of things.
Yeah,
Okay, first of all, of Nigerian descent. So
yeah,
I was born in England, and my parents obviously from Nigeria. So I've been there quite a few times. And when we used to go there, I was always ever so proud of my village where we came from. I was always ever so proud of the wisdom of them in a spiritual nature and their culture and their custom. And I never ever felt inferior when I was over here. I always appreciated being over there and
Mhm.
being part of that. But unfortunately, especially in Nigeria, how do you say, there's more graduates than there are jobs for them. And there's not much for the youngsters to do. So you're almost born into a paradigm where if
Mm.
you don't know somebody, you're not going to get a job. And therefore, back then, because this was during military time, you had a situation where the young boys had nothing to do. They had no prospects to grow into.
Mm.
So they became big arm robbers. So for us that go over there, we're very afraid because where I come from, kidnapping is a serious thing. If
Yeah,
you
man.
go over there, they're going to kidnap
Sorry,
you.
I need to just go to the
but
door.
yeah, carry on. Sorry. Yeah, carry on.
Yeah.
Sorry.
So
Edison.
kidnapping is a very serious thing over
That's
there.
right.
So a lot of us here, we don't want to go there and be part of that situation. A lot of people have been held at gunpoint. I've even been had police wave guns over me when I was over there as well. So there's the stigma of going over there is you're afraid not only of the armed robbers, but with the whole spiritual paradigm, you're scared of that as well. So that has now changed. And if you go to places like Lekki or go to Lagos, it's just as good as here. In
Mm.
fact, the people coming from Lekki are speaking to a gentleman, and he came here and complaining about the lower standards over here.
Yeah, yeah.
But the houses over there are beautiful and
Majestic.
they're so inexpensive to live in comparison to here. What would be a
Yes,
mansion over here would
that's
only be
right.
about 1,000 over there. So,
Hmm.
and Abuja, the same thing. Since it's now become military, now civilian rule as opposed to a military rule, it's an expensive place to visit. The visa to go over there is
Yeah,
humongous, about
yeah,
1,800 or what have you.
yeah.
So Nigeria, I can speak of that, but that's a place now where you can go there, live your life, pack up here, live over there if you've got a remote job and have a much better life than you can here. That's what
Okay,
it is now. But that
interesting.
message isn't getting out at all. Unfortunately, people are still going to remember the scary days of the armed robbers and not know that these pockets of um, everything like here exists. Even better.
Okay, thank you very much for that
Mm.
nice introduction. What I'll do is now I'm going to answer Curtis's question, what he asked before, and we'll go
Mm,
round on this one. So
cool.
Curtis mentioned before about Africa not being unified before.
Mhm.
Um, how I see it, just looking at not only 500 years of history, I look at like as far back as we can see things. So Africa's a massive continent, first of all, a very huge continent. I mean, if you see it on the Peter projection map, you'll see it's a lot
Mhm.
bigger than what they let on also. So
Mhm.
when I look at unification, for example, Egypt is a place where when people figured out who are the Egyptians, this is the issue with who are the there's many different Africans that built Kemet. So at this particular time, and now we look at DNA studies. Yes, we know about the Eurocentric, we're saying the Mediterranean, white Eurasian type people built them and all that one. That's been proven wrong. So
Mm.
we do know that the people who supposedly come from Nubia, Sudan, what they call Kush, Ethiopia. And you can go
Mm.
back right to the beginning of the Nile because in the oldest religious texts, they speak about coming from the beginning of the Nile. So
Mm.
there had to be unification. Also, there's people who came from the Sahara Desert when it was green, grassland, vegetation, and they had to move when this desert started to dry up. Some moved toward Nigeria, some moved towards east, west, south into Kemet, and they had
100%.
to unify. Now, sometimes what makes us unify, I think, is one of the key points. And one of the key points is for example, when there's real bad things that happen, like example the Sahara Desert drying up, automatically people realize we've got to unify. So sometimes nature can make us unify, nature can make us divide. And this is we were the people of nature and we were one with nature. Yes, there was times where there was tribal conflicts, and also they have been infiltrated by many different people from the Romans, the Greeks, the Assyrians, the Persians, the Arabs, later other Europeans. That's divided us up. So I'm not going to go on too long about this, but I'm going to bring it to Raz now because our see thing is we're not in a perfect world. Europeans have been at worse wars than us, World War One, World War Two, and then going butchering each other. Many times it's written in the texts. The Romans written about the British people, about they were just butchering and chopping each other's heads off. So we're not in a perfect world, but there's times where Africans did unify. Bantu groups, you see them from east to west. They built all them great civilizations in what we call sub-Saharan Africa. But at the same time, nothing is perfect. So I'm going to come to Raz to answer Curtis's question about Africa was never unified, or was it unified from your perspective, Raz?
I think I even have to question this, right? Where even myself as an entity, sometimes I'm not in unification with myself.
Yeah.
Like I said, we were talking about duality a couple of weeks ago.
Yeah.
And Patrick made a reference where he was talking about his journalistic journey, right? And he was talking about his thought things, and he used that metaphor of, like in the cartoons, the Tom and Jerry, the angelic Tom, the diabolical Tom, each giving advice. So we can be in conflict within ourselves. So as human nature, there will be times of conflict and war, and there will be periods of peace. And any area around the world would be the same. But like, it's a good question that Curtis has said, because like you said, Africa is a massive continent, right? And there would be even conflict at times within the particular tribe, which is a nation state, right? So there would be conflict within the nation state, there would be periods of great peace. And it would be the same with the neighboring cultures or nation states, and even further far, afield. So I think I don't even like the word romanticize, because I know, Curtis, you say, the word, we all know diaspora means dissemination and that, but I'm a poet and I'm a lyrical don. So
I get it, but it is just playing with words. Most of it's not really.
But playing with words is fine. Playing with words is fine, because that's why we're in this situation, because these words have been weaponized against us, and in order to unshackle the chains, we should be free to have artistic license to make sense of self and our environment. You know what I mean? So I do think I don't really like the word romanticize as such, but like, it's important for us not to look at Africa through a kind of I suppose a kind of like gimmicky, like on a gimmickry level, right? Because we know that part of life is struggle, and you have periods of health and sickness. You know what I mean? You have periods of wealth and poverty. You have periods of light and darkness. So these are the things, you know what I mean? So we know that within Africa, we had a great civilization, right? Civilizations, nucleuses, right? And they went around the world and brought that light to other parts of the world. And sometimes, when we're looking at, like, say, our own, I don't even like the word history, it's like his story. But like, for example, the conquerors who conquer will always put their version and their mind control program in place, right? And so therefore, I think it's important for us to know it's the human condition, but we came from a great civilization, great civilizations, and we had lots of interaction with other parts of the world. And by and large, we brought a lot of sanitation, agriculture, and many other aspects of civilization. And in order to bring civilization, you have to have civility. You know what I mean? So that's how I would see it. I wouldn't necessarily say the whole of Africa was united and we lived in love and unity forever. But there was great periods of unity and there was great periods of war. I will say this though, that when the Europeans came, right, that was amplified because they were of that level. Like Patrick said earlier, I think you said it might have been you, James. I can't recall where they were saying like, "Oh, we're taking this land," and the indigenous people never had an idea that this land was theirs. It was like by grace. You know what I mean? It was like the life force never took it for granted. It wasn't something to buy and sell. The whole Western model is something of great disdain for a lot of them people. But the Western model is such a juggernaut. It's ironed out a lot of indigenous cultures. And so there's McDonald's everywhere and KFC everywhere and Costa Coffee and Starbucks. And this is how they do it. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah, man. Nice, good, interesting, and good question as also, Curtis. You know, I'm not just seeing it from the negative point. I look at it from a balanced point of view. Patrick, what's your view on what Curtis was asking about? Well, Africa not being united, or what's your view on it? You know.
Well, I'm taking this like two-pronged. The first thing is, I know he used the term about black on black, and that term for me, black on black, is a term that we hear all the time, whether it be in the UK, in America, black on black crime, and so on and so on. It's, without going into the semantics, just to strip it to the bare bones, black on black crime or warfare or whatever is a racist term, yeah, because we never ever heard the term white on white crime, or violence or conflict. It's just, you know, Europe, which is predominantly white and has been for a long time, has been waging war throughout the whole of its recorded history with each other, yeah, up until well, still doing it now. You know what I mean? You only have to turn on the news; it's still going on now. Not on the scales that it has been. You know what we've seen in the last 100, 200 years or so, where just about everyone was always fighting everybody. France, Britain, Germany, Portugal, Spain, Dutch, Italy, they were all fighting, you know, conquering each other. Once they moved into Africa, they found somebody else, and then, you know, racism was developed, you know, to justify the colonization and the continuation of slavery, and it become all black this and black, you know, these terms were developed. But in relation to the unity of Africa, as everyone's rightfully said, Africa's a massive place, yeah, a massive continent, and you hear people talking about Africa like it's a country, yeah, you know, in the modern day definitions of a country. It's no such thing, no such thing, and like basically, me personally, and most scholars, or just about every scholar of any repute, doesn't say Africa was ever all united and or will be. You know what I mean? That's like, I'd say, quite a naive thought process to say that, because that's, as Nick's pointed out, you know, even within tribes and certain groups, there's conflict. Even within the individual, there's conflict. So for me, that's not even, when I say a discussion, I mean that's not even something that could be taken seriously, to say Africa was this like utopia place before Europeans come, because that's a myth. That's a total myth. Yeah, there's always been conflict. There's always, you know, there's been periods of peace. Certain groups may have united and be unified for a, you know, short amount of time. So that's never ever been the case. United in a sense of the way you could show how Europe united to be, even though within that internal conflict, Europe united in order to be the colonizers of Africa. Yeah, so going back to, you know, from when the Portuguese first traveled around the Cape and visited various places in the early 15th century. And you know, not like Europeans hadn't been into Africa before that, because obviously you had the Romans, the Greeks, but after the so-called Dark Ages had come to an end, where, you know, Rome fell and all these places fell, and Europe went into a state of, I'll just use the word disrepair or decline, and culture, they call that the Dark Ages, and then they came back out of that and the so-called Enlightenment. And when these people, Portuguese, ventured into parts of Africa and around the coastal areas and made new connections with the people there, they brought with them certain things and took away a lot of more than they brought. Yeah, they brought negativity and took away a lot of the positive things from Africa. So for me, that conflict that grew out of that and the separating and drawing up lines where natural barriers mark people's territory or country or nation states, whatever you want to call it, natural barriers like a mountain, a massive savanna, a river, a this or that, you know what I mean? They were natural barriers. And then once Europeans come and started carving it up bit by bit until eventually they made it official in what's called known as the Berlin Conference in 1885, if I'm right, around them times. In fact, it was around this time. Started in November. It went on for a few months, maybe up to the February or something of 1884 to 1885. But anyway, the exact date not relevant. But that then decided to carve up Africa in a way that's never been done before, where there's these mad lines of countries which just it's going to create natural conflict. If someone come into my house and bust down the wall and joined it into the next door neighbours and said, well, now that split's yours. Clearly, my neighbour's not going to be happy with that. You know what I mean? And but say, no, that's the new boundaries of your house. And then knock down the other side of my wall and draw in somebody from next door. And that's basically what was been going on. That's, as Nick's rightfully said, it made them, any little divisions that were there and conflicts were there even bigger and greater. So that, for me, I wouldn't say answered the question, but it discusses it. Discusses the semantics of that so-called unity.
All right. So one thing I picked up off what Patrick was saying is I call it the word reasoning. The Europeans reasoned with each other for the bigger prize, basically, whether they had conflict or not. Edison, can you add on to this what Curtis said?
Yeah, the thing is, like what Patrick said, there's two halves to this.
Okay.
So there's the natural half of what Africa is, because I know I can speak from Nigeria. Yeah. There's over 100 different languages. Yeah, and the same with Ghana, not so many languages, but Africa was a sense of many tribes, hundreds of tribes all over the place. And as Patrick was saying, when Rhodes came in and decided to carve everything up, as Europe made that trace, they then carved everything up. Things like Nigeria and Ghana have only been around since 1917 during the Ottoman War. So these places and how we perceive Africa now is not how it naturally was.
Yeah.
So the concepts of uniting, yes, different tribes would have wars. That's why you have the warriors. This is why you have all these different aspects of different tribes have different ways. But essentially, you've never heard of an African conqueror looking to conquer all of Africa.
Yeah.
Everyone always understood, if you're encroaching on our land, we will fight to protect our things. But it wasn't like how the Europeans that came from Germany that scorned all of Germany all the way to Britain and would burn down the next village to take their resources to take over the land. We haven't had that conquering mentality. We are where we are and we make the most of what we've had. And it's, again, not to say harmony, but everyone understands if you take what's not yours, you'll have it. But you'll go to Africa and the houses back then, as my uncles used to say, before Christianity, all the doors were open because everyone know if you're stealing something, something was going to get you. So this is Africa.
Yeah.
But when you speak of black on blacks, remember Africans never saw themselves as black.
Yeah. Yeah.
That was the point I was making. That's an American thing, really, more than anything. Yeah. It's not really an African thing.
It's not.
Directly, I mean. Yeah.
100%. So the Africans in Europe, they refer to themselves as black because they unite together because they're not familiar with all their backgrounds of where they come from. And they haven't got that tight unity because I know in Nigeria, if you're from another tribe, your tribe might not like them marrying them.
Mm,
Yeah, for my
absolutely,
tribal
yeah.
rubble, if it's a Yoruba, they say, no, we're not having you marry a Yoruba. You have to marry within your own tribe. So all those stipulations were there back then. But now, when everyone comes to the West, everyone is just doing everything because no one's working from the history and no one's working from the villages. Anyhow, to the bigger picture, where when the black people were necessarily given their freedom or expected in societies, they put them all in the same area
Bracket.
and then underdeveloped that area so that the people were in a state of scarcity. So whereas before you would work in unity, there's not enough. The mindset of you could take from somebody that is your neighbor because you need to do that has now become what it is. So where
Yeah.
you get the black on black crime is because they can't go. When the young kids in England had that battle where they wanted to take over the areas of, and the police didn't stop them, the police stopped them from going across the West End in London. They stopped them going to the rich white areas. They blocked off all the bridges. So essentially, they want you to fight in your own area. You can destroy your own area. You live within it.
Yeah.
Yeah? Always get to promote black on black crime because it maintains the stereotype that the black people have no control and they're savages. And that's why that monicum has been created to keep the black people in a place where don't
Yeah.
worry about the white people stealing your tax and stealing everything from you every day. Worry about the guy next to you who's going to steal
Yeah,
the
yeah.
pennies out of your pocket.
All
Yeah,
right.
Freedom rule.
that's
Yeah.
my
It's very
perception.
true.
Yeah, well said, man. Well
Well,
said.
Curtis, if you continue this, but also another question I want to add here. What was the purpose of your question, even though it opened up, for people make good point, but what was the main purpose of the question?
Just because, for example, the Yoruba or Yoruba, some people
Mm,
say, when I've worked with people from there, they say Yoruba. Um,
mm,
but they were fighting against the Daomi, and they used to
mhm.
take them as slaves
Oh,
before any Europeans went there.
Now, when
That
we
was a
say
big, that was a big,
slaves,
that was a big thing.
one thing, I mean, you can continue with saying, but when we say the word slaves,
Yeah.
we don't want to confuse it with prisoners of war. And what I mean by that is prisoners of war. Prisoners of war are able to rise up, whereas in the transatlantic slave trade, you're the slave, your son's a slave, your daughter's a slave
Yeah, but I'm
until
going
we're
back
not free.
further than before the transatlantic slave trade. That's what I'm
Yeah, no,
talking
no.
about.
So what I
Yeah.
meant is prisoners of war
Mm.
is
You could
because
win back your freedom.
yeah, yeah, yeah.
It
That's
depends. It depends. It depends because that don't forget these things are worldwide. But even if you forget about Africa for a second and you think about Ireland, why were the
mm,
chieftains? Why wasn't there
no.
one
We want to focus on
chieftain?
Africa. We want to focus on Africa.
No,
I
I know, but
understand.
I'm
Yeah, yeah,
saying
yeah.
people
Because we're talking
just
about
behave
Africa.
that way.
Yeah, because I would
No,
never compare Africa to Europe. Europe is
but I'm not
totally.
compare. I'm not
Yeah, yeah,
comparing.
yeah.
I'm comparing Europe to Europe when I say
Yeah,
that.
because we know about
Because
the
if you're
Slavs. The
Irish,
Slavs.
yeah, well there were the Slavs, yeah.
Yeah,
They were basically like a fiver.
yeah,
That was like carrying a Slav around with you. And don't forget the Vikings were the ones doing that the most. And who were
mm.
they trading with? Does anybody know? Who were they trading with mostly, primarily?
there
Does
was some
anybody
black
know?
Viking. There was some black Vikings also.
Eric the Black.
No, I'm talking about,
No,
right?
I don't know. Not for Vikings.
You
Vikings,
did.
good.
You had
They
black
went, they went.
Vikings, though. You had
Yeah,
black
black Vikings
Vikings as
also.
well.
No, I'm not saying there's not, but I'm
Yeah,
talking about the tribes. Do you know what I'm saying? Regardless of what the skin color, whatever.
yeah,
Or do you know what I mean? I'm saying that they were trading with the Arabs. They,
Okay.
they were they were trading with well what we now call Arabs. You know what I'm saying? They were
would
trading with them.
would we call them the Moors at the time?
Not necessarily because
No.
Okay.
that was during and after the Umayyad and all that stuff.
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
Do you see what I'm
Oh,
saying?
yeah,
So
yeah,
it's not something unique to Africans in it by
yeah,
any stretch. Don't forget, your terrain that you live in, it says a lot about what your culture is going to be defined as. So if
yeah.
you live in a valley, a flat valley with a river running through it, and then that's going to be really good land to live in. If you live in the mountains, you're buggered, basically.
Yeah.
Yeah,
You know what I mean? Because you're gonna have to be. That's why the Macedonians were some of the strongest fighters from Greece. So I'm saying because they lived in the mountains, so they had to be solid as a rock.
Yeah.
You know what I'm saying? And that's it. You got to remember like the terrain that people are living in, how much water they've got or what access to water, and all these other factors, you see. So
I
when people
mean,
like whittle
yeah.
it down to like one corner of one culture or a couple of cultures that are living next to each other, I'm just going by the paradigm. I'm not talking about whether it's a racial thing or anything. I'm talking about like where you're grown up defines a lot of about you might
Oh,
not
the
even be from that
environments. Yeah,
place. Yeah.
definitely, definitely,
Do you know
definitely.
what I mean? So if you're
Yeah.
starving a lot in the mountains when it's hard to like the soil was like this, and a lot of African soil was like that. Where if you go back, if you're talking about like just harking back to when we were talking about Africa, if you've only got like topsoil about that thick, it's going to be difficult. So you're going to have to trade with people, and you're going to have to find something to trade with them. And if that doesn't work, people end up fighting with each other
Well,
over
a
it.
funny thing with trade, it's the main thing is to control your own trade routes. So if you
Mhm.
look at like Arabs took our trade routes from one side, the Romans took when they beat Carthage took the trade routes there. The
Mm.
transatlantic slave trade when they come, though the Portuguese were in partnerships with the Arabs. So once your trade routes taken, then there's going to be more internal problems because
Yeah.
we did rely
Yeah.
on trade, and everyone also relied on Africa. Then the Arabs became the middlemen. Portuguese and all these different, they were all like middlemen, me, the Turks later. Because even when the Arab slave trade was happening, when it began, the Turks took over their slave trade. No one really speaks on this much because the Arabs were running it from the beginning when they came in like 640, 639 AD to Egypt. But then in the ninth century, the 8th to ninth century, the Turks have took over it. So when you see these people called, the Turks were enslaved in by the Arabs, and then the Turks rose up. You can even see in this in Chancellor Williams's book when he mentions about the white slaves that rised up. They were called what's the Mameluke, the Mamelukes.
Mm.
Yeah, they rose up. So I'm
Where
gonna
were
come to
where were they?
Raz.
Sorry, where were they from?
The Mamelukes,
Mm.
they were considered as white slaves,
Mm.
and the times of when the Arabs had conquered North Africa, these were kept into slavery. So a lot of these were Slavs, a lot of these were Albanians, like people from
Mm.
Eastern Europe, a lot of Eastern Europeans. So basically, what I was saying is that when the Slavs were being oppressed by their own people in Europe, there were some Slavs and Albanians that were put into the Malian Empire. They were came there as laborers. But one
Mm.
thing I'll say is when they came to the Malian Empire, it'd be almost like, please take us into slavery in Africa because of the conditions of slavery in Europe was brutal. It was
Mm.
brutal for them, and they were able to rise up in these Malian empires and other things. Raz, I'm coming to you
I
now,
think
brother.
as well, right? I think
Yeah,
like we can get into the whys and wherefores
yeah,
of it, but we have to realize that like there was a system
yeah.
like for many centuries where if you was a prisoner of war, you'll be educated and you would be looked after in a completely different way than the
Mm,
intergenerational slavery of the global slave trade that's still running today. And I think we can talk about other groups, whatever, but when it comes to the slavery, the land theft, the resources theft, the people theft, the culture theft, I don't think the world's ever saw anything like that on that
mm,
scale in such a couple of centuries, 3, 4 centuries, and like lands being completely taken over. The Americas, where you're killing off the black indigenous, the red indigenous, and you're calling them savages, and you do the same in Africa, and you kill them off, and you call them the savages, and ruling over India and all these type of things. I don't think anything like that has happened within the historical context, right? That we're such a massive thing and it's still going on today and we're still paying the price today. Do you know
Yeah.
what I mean?
mm.
Most definitely.
Yeah,
I don't know about like you, Mr. Diboe, and Mr. Agbanji, right?
Yes, go ahead.
You have the names of the land, of your culture.
Mm.
I'm walking around with the slave master name still. And
Mm.
this is also something not to take lightly because that denotes as property of someone else. And then when people are saying, I'm not no damn African, it's partly paid for by these things. It's not like an accident and it's not something to take lightly. Do you know what I mean?
yeah.
Can I just follow that? That's just briefly, right? What about the Lenape in Jersey? Like they now there's a guy last time I actually watched any of his videos was probably about 10 years ago to be honest, but he's got like a PhD in the Lenape culture, and he's one of his great grandfather bought the whole owned actually the whole of what's now the Jersey Shore,
Wow.
where all the jet skiing and everything goes on and all the tourist industry is. And they've sworn blind that now these are very, melanated people.
Mm.
And they've sworn blind that they were already there. And none of them came from Africa directly in modern
Yeah.
times, if you know what I'm saying.
Oh,
Yeah,
Yeah.
man.
Well,
okay,
okay, Patrick. I'm going to bring you in on this one now because
okay.
I know Patrick. I've been to Egypt, you've been to Egypt, Razas, studying Kemet and stuff like that. You know about a lot of the infiltration, all the invasions for going back to millenniums ago, and how that affected and also shaped Egypt, Kemet. And I'm starting with Kemet because before West Africa, East Africa was getting colonized or trade routes taken, we have to start with Kemet because it's the doorway when you're moving in from Asia, Europe, where you can come on land basically. Patrick.
Um, well, when you look at the history of Kemet, what is known as Egypt nowadays, which is a Greek word, obviously, yeah.
Yeah,
Um, there's been a lot of invasions going on there, and like to paraphrase Cheikh Diop, he said, Egyptology was created in order to take it away from all the minds of all people that Kemet was a Negro or a black race, yeah, who built it up. Because in all the books I've ever read about Egypt and all the documentaries I've read watched about Egypt, um, a European, Michael Flinders Petrie, is classed as the father of Egyptology, from a European point of view. And he spent almost 50 years in Egypt and wrote, I think, something like 36 books, something like that. I don't claim to have read them all, but I've read about 5 of his books. And as much as he comes from a Eurocentric point of view, in order for people to tell a lie, a good lie, you have to know the truth. Yeah.
Mm.
When you know the truth about something, you can distort it properly, good, brilliantly. You know what to hide, what not to hide, and how to then reshape that. That I've used the term reshape the truth, even though it's a nonsensical term because there can only be one truth. But basically, that's what they're doing. They're creating a new truth and a new belief in some ways. And a lot of the things that is always said, even from Eurocentric point of view, is that from the most simplistic thing to the most detailed study, is that the people who populated and built up what we know as modern day Egypt with the Great Pyramids and all these fantastical structures and temples migrated, and depending on your viewpoint, down the Nile or up the Nile. Yeah, we'll say down the Nile. Yeah, because they came from Upper Egypt, which is going into Africa. They came down the Nile and settled there. And let's just say, in the history of migration, because migration has been something that's always gone on. People have always moved around here, there, and everywhere. But when people migrate, that doesn't mean, just to throw a figure on it, there's a million people live there. And when they migrate, all the million move there. Might only be 10,000, 50,000, 100,000, but certainly not all of them. So whoever migrated down the Nile to the Nile Delta and built all these fantastical structures came from deeper inside of Africa, yeah, and still obviously are in Africa because Egypt is in Africa. They came down, so these are all as the carvings, the paintings, and one of the greats, well, seen as a great European historian to some, and others call him the father of lies. And one of the reasons they call him the fathers of lies is because of some of his descriptions of the Egyptians, and that's the man Herodotus, who lived in the 5th century BC, who described many things and talked about where the Egyptians came from. the places that we know today as modern day Sudan, Ethiopia, and them type of areas. The Egyptians seen them as their ancestors. Yeah, that's their ancestral home. So all these things have come to shape what we see there today. And I said, they've left, these are not stories. They've left testimony and rocks, giant statues and paintings and everything in literature that is testimony to who they were and who they represented and how they seen other people from other places. There's depictions of how they seen Europeans and other Mediterraneans and so on and so on. So for me, I'd stick with what Diop says. You know what I mean? Egyptology, I agree with that. Egyptology, because what other country is studied? People study ancient Rome, people study ancient Greece, people study a lot of ancient civilizations, the Mayans, the Aztecs, the Incas, the Olmecs, the Chinese, the this, but there's no ologies in any of them things. The only ology is Egyptology. That's the only thing that has an ology after its name.
Yeah,
And
that's a
like
good
Diop
point,
says,
yeah, man.
like Diop says, it was created simply to take the black out of Egypt, because at the same time, in the same teachings of learned places in Europe, where they're telling you how people developed in parts of Europe, if you look at the equivalent timescales in Egypt, there was universities, there was schools, there was education systems, there was farming systems, there was all these different things. And when you got to the stage of like the 15th, 16th century onwards, 17th century, at the height of like the transatlantic slave trade, to have the people who you're now demonizing as primitive and inferior, as stupid, as just actually lower than cattle, because horses were treated better than the enslaved from Africa. When you realize that these are the descendants of the people who built these great civilizations, then from your point of view, the first thing to do is to destroy that, to take that out of the minds of them, to take it out of the minds of yourselves and your people as well, because you don't want the average white person thinking, wow, well, these were once a great civilization. You have to destroy that. So if any one of us had a child and stopped that child from reading, writing, and being educated in a school, as soon as they have a child, that's it. In one generation, you've dumbed down the whole population. And that's exactly what happened when Africa was colonized through the slave trade. They dumbed down the entire continent, basically, because they just stopped people. People wasn't allowed to learn. You know what I mean? People wasn't allowed to read. People wasn't allowed to write. People wasn't allowed to know no knowledge. People was only taught enough to work like a mule, to work like an ox, to do this, to dig this land, to do that, or to carry this here, or carry that there, or chop this down, or chop that down, and that was it. But all that knowledge was taken away. And it's not like today where you can have the knowledge of the world on this phone. Back then, there were certain manuscripts and documents and scrolls. Once somebody took them from you or destroyed them, that history, that knowledge was gone, it was lost. And we've seen it time and time again. We're going to finish off now. Seen it time and time again. Just the greatest conquest of Egypt came with Alexandra. I'm not going to call him the great, but Alexandra.
Of Macedonia, yeah.
That was the greatest conquest. And when he went to conquer Egypt, he took with him a man called Aristotle, who was basically a philosopher, a glorified librarian in some respects. Why would you take them? You're going to conquer and dominate, but you knew they had certain knowledge, because a lot of these people anyway had been there and learned and went there for tuition and learned from the Egyptians, so they knew what they were going for. Just like when the British attacked Magdala in Ethiopia, they took the head of the British Library with them, so they knew they had certain manuscripts and scrolls and documents and information that they wanted, and they auctioned off a lot of them on the spot, and a lot of them took back to England. So that's how you destroy a people, by taking away the culture and education, the learning systems, and replacing it with nothing, with nothingness.
We were going round anyway. No, very good point anyway, Patrick. You made brilliant points then. And I like the point when you mentioned about the demonization. Now, I must have to bring African spirituality in when it comes to demonization, because Edison, I'm going to bring you in on this now, because I've watched a lot of your ancestral essence, and you're going to be definitely in. So when we deal with African spirituality, for example, and how it's
Yeah,
been demonized by the European and the Arabs and other peoples now. So when we have things like sacred science, and also the word when they say witchcraft or witch doctor, because when you look at
Yeah,
the word witch doctor, this is two different words. I mean, the doctor's in the healer. We have healers, but
yeah.
witch. So it's kind of like it's a total contradiction of the whole word, witch doctor. So I mean, you could give us like a
No.
brief introduction on this. I'll bring it in next, Curtis. 1 second.
Mm.
Yeah, you see, it's
Edison.
a
Yeah,
very interesting paradigm because what was I think Curtis was mentioning it, to be fair, about in this country, they found where was it Guernsey? He was talking about Guernsey, and he
yeah,
said that they
Jersey.
found indigenous Jersey, so they found
Yeah,
indigenous black people there.
yeah,
So quiet as kept, this country was a black country,
yeah,
Britain.
yeah,
The Scottish, the Picts were black. When they talk
the
about Cheddar
Scoots.
George,
Yeah,
they were
yeah, yeah.
black. So the original people of this country
Mm.
were black. When the Romans came over here, they
Black.
found the black people here.
yeah,
And it was a case where not till the 5th century and then the Germans came over is when we got the Angles and the Saxons and it became
Saxons.
England. So this is a black country. The importation of Europeans came with the religion and everything as well. But the original religion or comprehension was Wiccancraft, was
Mm.
witchcraft.
Mm.
Yeah, the women were the witches. This is
Mm.
where you get the word weak
The
from.
healers.
Yeah, they were the healers. And then if you go to Eastern Europe, again, you will find exactly the same traditions. Everywhere across Europe, Ireland, all of these places, the Welsh, they have their magicians. All of them have their connection with nature
Yeah,
and
yeah.
knew and understood the various plants and what have you, how they had a relationship
Mhm.
with humans and how that can be used in order to heal the body. And this was everywhere before the Christians came.
The
Sorry not
church
to offend
destroyed it.
anyone. And then literally started the witch trials
Mm.
and
Yeah.
started burying them. If
Which
you
by the
see,
Well,
generals.
yeah, well, the
Yeah.
guy who wrote the Maleficarum,
okay,
um,
I'm not familiar with that, but carry on.
during
Yeah.
King James times,
Mhm.
King James, man,
Well,
which
go on. I think I know that
this
one.
frustrates the hell out of me, this story about King James, because because they used to do that, what's it called, man, when you just, it's like screen printing sort of thing,
Mhm.
where you'd like stamp the
Yeah.
pictures onto a book. And so people
Okay.
have picked up, some of my friends, right, they picked up a book, right, and they call them King James the Black. And people have
Yeah.
some of my friends have interpreted that as him being black skinned.
I,
It's
I
not, it's
know,
not
I
that.
know.
It's not that.
It's
Yeah, it's
madness.
totally
That,
not that. It's because of a
yeah, yeah,
picture in a book,
yeah.
which was full of black ink. Do you get me? And not very,
Mhm.
like, it wasn't very sophisticated. Some of my
Mhm.
mates were going mad on this years ago. I was going, bro, it's
No, no,
getting
no.
it wrong, man. Yeah. So that kind of thing. So now the Maleficarum was the best-selling book after the Bible worldwide. And so when you look at the word witch being identified by females, it came from that book because he was a
That's right.
misogynist. He was a known. Do
Okay.
you see what
Well,
I'm saying?
the
Just to
mystics,
say,
the
just
mystics
to
was a
quickly,
big thing back in going
yeah.
back mysticism.
Mm,
Even when people mention about Jesus and
mm,
he was the mystic, saying so.
All of
Walked
them,
on water.
same as
Just to
Muhammad.
quickly jump in to
Yeah.
Go
extend
ahead.
what
Sorry,
Edison said, and
Braz.
then I'm going to be
Sorry.
quiet,
Go
right?
ahead, my friend.
Yeah.
What Edison was saying was that what we know is druidry,
mm.
Wicca,
Mm,
and
Mm.
witches is
yeah,
African tradition.
exactly.
That's what he's saying. And those people that were called witches, they were watchers, the
Yeah.
watchers of the people and the guiders. So that matriarchal doctors and healing is
Mm.
the same thing. And
Yeah.
witch
Same
doctor
thing.
is like saying witch, doctor. It's the same thing.
Yeah.
They are the healers, and it was the church that destroyed them.
This
Demonized
That
them big
wiped it out.
style. You know.
this is 100%. That's why it's not
Mm.
African, as in it was the world until the
Yeah.
church came
Mhm.
and took over that. That Africa has their own special one, or let me put this: your tradition is straight based on the area and the forest and your connection with the forest. Most of the
Yeah,
African
yeah.
traditions are based on the herbs and the magics and the
Yeah, man.
relationship because
Yeah,
they
man.
had relationship with the trees, they had
Hmm.
relationship with the ground, and they also didn't see an external God as a concept because they maintained the relationship with their
With him.
ancestors. So they maintained that link within themselves so that the ancestors could still pass on knowledge of how to have a better relationship with the environment. And in India, China, wherever you want to call it, Aborigines, all
Mm.
doing the same thing.
So you know when you mentioned about environment, what's interesting because I'm aware of your tribe.
Mm.
You're next to my tribe, aren't you? The Ijo. You
Yeah,
near
you're
the
Igbos, isn't it?
no?
And
I'm
we're
Ijo.
rebels. We're in this.
Ijo.
Yeah. Oh, Ijo. Okay. Yeah.
Yes. So
So we're near.
are you near the river, like in Delta State? You near the river
Well,
where
you
the
see,
Ijos
yeah.
are?
You see, here's the irony now, isn't it?
Reason
When
why I've asked that, the reason why I've just
yeah,
asked that is because, like you mentioned about the environment, my tribe will speak a lot of things on water spirits. You could also call them
yeah.
mermaids. So that's why I'm bringing that up. If you continue, sorry. Yeah,
We had that in our
yeah,
place where again, if you go to the river, you can talk to the river because the
that's
river
right.
is a
Yeah,
living being. And you
Mm.
yeah,
can ask the river to help you manifest
Mhm.
various things in this dimension because
That's
water,
right.
earth, fire, and air, the
Life
building
giver.
blocks, and
Elements,
the
man.
intelligence behind the elements is what's
Mm.
creating this reality. So if you have a good relationship with them, you can bring certain things from the electrical field around you into your own experience. So there was the water spirits, but something
yeah.
again which was interesting. Where we come from, we also bury our ancestors or our family under our homes.
Yeah.
Like the Egyptians created the tombs, we created that paradigm as well. So you would have, instead of putting a burial thing, you would put all the family underneath a house. So when they were pouring libation and people got that habit of pouring it on the floor,
Mm.
no, you don't pour it on any floor. You poured it on the house that
Mm.
you lived in, where all your ancestors were underneath the floor
Mm.
of
Mm.
that house. And that's how they got to the habit of pouring drinks.
Mm.
That has all been turned into something else. So you're pouring it on some
Oh, do you mean like
concrete
the
for your
homies who
one
ain't
river.
here type of thing? And that came from because
Yeah, all that homies and all
people
that
used to
stuff.
more
The alcohol,
spit, and
the spirits.
I'm not saying spit
Yeah, yeah,
like
yeah, yeah.
spit. I'm talking about like spraying it with your lips. I learned
Well,
that in
yeah,
South
there's
Africa. I learned
they
that in
do
South
that
Africa,
spray.
man. Yeah.
I see that. So you can do the spraying if you're spraying it on something or you're spraying it on, say, if you're feeding
Mm.
something. So say you have in the Yoruba, you have the orishas.
Mm.
And
Yeah.
all the different regions have different what do you call them, where they would have a figure like a head
Like
or metal
figurines.
or a
Yeah.
pot.
Django or like
Yeah,
Gun.
Yeah.
and you
Yeah.
and you see the trick of that is to call Shango, hold the figurine, and infuse Shango in your body into the figurine.
You
So
become that.
your connection of the Orisha is taken from within you and now placed into an external object. And now, when you're dealing with that external object, you're then communicating with that object because now that object is holding an essence in it. And you can spray on it, you can smoke cigars and blow on it. You can ask it, what does it want? Do you want some rum? Do you want some pepper? Do you want some coffee? Do you want some water? Do you want some whatever you want? Blood,
Mm.
whatever. So you're asking that Orisha to say, I need you to help me in this dimension. What is it that you want? And then with voice of cowries or whatever divisionation system, you can then speak to the energy that's now in that object, take what it wants, spray whatever, and then ask it to go and manifest what it is that you want to manifest.
Well, just gonna say what you just said. Then me and
Sorry,
Raz
go
did a
ahead.
podcast last time. We were dealing with
Mm,
spirituality, but we were also
mm,
speaking about manifestation.
yes.
I think it was me, you, Curtis, on it, Raz. If you remember,
Yeah,
see
man.
what he's talking about manifesting.
Yeah, yeah.
Mm.
Can I can I just come in
Please
on that? Because
go ahead.
Let me just bring Raz, and then we'll bring you straight in because we were speaking about
Yeah,
manifesting. So I want to
go ahead.
kind of relate it to this because I want to move
Mm,
into the spirituality area because if
mm.
we don't deal with spirituality when we're dealing with Africa, we're not really going too deep into the roots here. That's why I want to hit it
It's
hard.
a,
Yeah, man.
Go ahead.
Well, brother Edison was saying, right?
Yeah.
Everything has like we have a relationship with all the elements because we are the elements.
That's
All these
right.
elements outside us are within us, and
Mm,
we are. It's like the micro and the macro, right? So you basically see the Almighty, if you want to say, or the Most High, right? Not necessarily as outside of you, it's
Mm.
within and without. You know what I
Internal,
mean? There's no
external.
separation.
Yeah.
And so, therefore, like water, we're 70% water. The
mhm.
Earth's surface is 70%. You know, we have that relationship where there is, I've not seen them, but I've got every idea, right, that there is aquatic humanoids because
Mhm.
it's so much, I've heard it so much within worldly cultures, African cultures, and other
Mm.
cultures. And I want to be right when I say this. There's, I think, if anybody can confirm this, there's a people known as the O'Shea people, right,
Go
who
on.
are like mermaids.
Yeah,
Have
well,
you?
we have this in
Well,
my
this
tribe. You know
or
what I
where
mean?
does the word
Yeah,
ocean come from? I mean,
yeah,
like
yeah.
when it's like you can play with words, but we have to play with words
Of
because in
course, of
playing
course.
with words, we're looking at like possibilities, probabilities. So
Mm,
I'm thinking the whole ocean thing is coming from the same ocean because it's the water, and the water is a living force. The wind is
mm.
a living force. The light is a living force. We
Mhm.
have that within us. Do you know what I mean? So that manifestation, why would we be not along the lines of manifestation when the word manifestation means bringing
Yeah.
things into this
Mm.
sphere that was once an
Yeah.
idea because everything was once an idea before we see it, before
Yeah.
it comes into being.
Okay. Yeah.
I'm done, Patrick.
Yeah.
Would you like
Patrick,
to?
Yeah.
you
No,
want to answer this? Is it Patrick?
yeah, just to
Yeah.
add to
Good.
that a little bit, because
Okay.
I don't know too much about them people, but I know there is a tribe of people who are great, basically fishermen, like you can go down and hold their breath for
Mm.
up to like 20 minutes and all that type of thing.
Mm.
Mm.
And
Yeah,
and
yeah,
and young childs, even now today in modern times, when they're born, they can, because you while you're in the prior to being actually born, you're in liquid.
yes.
And when they're born, they
Yeah.
can swim in water and it doesn't bother them,
They
you know what
actually
I mean?
burst the
A
eardrums.
newborn baby can swim in water
Mm.
without any issues. But okay, just moving on from that, you mentioned about spirituality and I know James, you started off with you can't mention Africa without dealing with spirituality, which is true. But for me, I find not saying in this group in particular, but I find a lot of people when they talk about spirituality in Africa, they talk about it like it's one thing. Like the way you have Catholicism, you have Islam, you have
Mm.
Judaism, like
Mhm.
it's one thing. And just going off from what Edison said, just talking about Nigeria alone, with all these
Mm.
different languages, and then different languages, you can you know, when you're talking different languages, that different language brings with it its own culture, that brings with it
Yeah.
its own tradition. That, some of these might cross over. The one thing,
Mm.
there's no uniform or unified spirituality in Africa. And I'm not saying there's never been, but
What I'd
there certainly
say,
isn't.
sorry, Patrick, if there's something that I would say,
No, well, let me
majority,
finish my point. Let me finish my
no,
point
because we got to
first.
be correct what we're saying.
No,
More,
what I
there's
need to
more.
finish my point
No,
so
what a
until I finish it,
matriarchal. No, what I
you,
meant
you,
is a
you, you're
matriarchal
assuming,
system.
you're assuming what
No,
I
it's not
mean,
human.
yeah?
A matriarchal
But I
system.
haven't finished my point.
Yeah, yeah,
So you're only going to
One
assume,
voice, guys. One
yeah,
voice.
yeah,
yeah.
you're
One
Go
only going
on.
to
voice.
assume what I mean.
Yeah,
The
yeah,
point is, I'm not, as I said, for me, I'm just saying my belief on
yeah,
this,
yeah, yeah,
and
yeah,
from what I know and have heard and read and
yeah.
whatever, there is no one spirituality form because everyone has their own different traditions, different ways, different ceremonies. The one thing that I wouldn't say unifies them, but one thing that is the same within a lot of these different cultures and different traditions or belief systems. If they all believe in a higher being, a higher presence, or a supreme being, in that sense, but that doesn't necessarily unify them because one group will believe this is the right way, and another group will believe
Mm,
that, and they're both spiritualities, different forms of it, and the different practices of it. So Africa, when we talk about spirituality, we can't talk about it like it's one, I'll use the word religion, like you talk about Catholicism, Judaism,
Yeah.
Christianity, which is, well, it's Christianity, Catholicism. That was a bit of a mistake because Catholicism, it comes under Christianity, but you know what I mean? It's not one uniform thing. Yeah, there's so many different beliefs and varied beliefs, which they can create some of the conflict with you know, especially when things are redefined and people were moved and mixed with this tribe and that tribe, created conflicts and so on. So yeah, I agree. The spirituality there, it is something that's very important within African traditions, but it's not one unified thing, as in they all practice it the same way, because that's clearly not. There's no evidence to show that.
I think when I mention African spirituality, we deal with it from the beginning. We don't deal with it. See, Europeans, when they speak on any type of spirituality in Africa, they act like it only started like a few thousand years ago, kind of thing, where it's who you are in the beginning. So if we're dealing with it in the beginning, I'm not an evolution man. I understand this development, and I think you mentioned this last time, Patrick. You know, something that looks like this turns into an elephant and all that. So when they believe like that, like a lot of these people you'll speak on, we were always here, but not in this physical, for example. So when we're dealing with spirituality, the first people to be what we come into this physical realm, they must have been the first people to kickstart it all off. Do you get what I mean? It's like even when people left Africa now and they've moved around the world, they've left with the spirituality in the beginning. And I'm just basing this on my experience mixing with indigenous black groups, especially black groups, because they are the first indigenous original peoples. If I see the Ete, for example, they all speak on, there's a duality which everyone seems to connect to, like you mentioned, supreme being. Africa.
Well, that's the point I was making. Everyone else, that's the one thing that I wouldn't call it unifies them, but
no, it's not unified. It doesn't have to unify.
The word I'm looking for.
It doesn't have to unify, but it's something like one tribe could
one
recognize.
Thing in common. The common denominator in them all is that coming from a supreme being, a creation. It might have been a monotheism back in early, but what is early? Because again, that goes back to
this is the thing when we talk about the beginning,
or the egg, the human or the baby. You know what I mean?
When we talk about the beginning as well, like if we look at just based on oral history, because with this scientists and all that, when I say the scientists, the modern day scientists, they give us dates for things you existed 200,000 years ago in this part of Africa. Before that, you were with these other species, Lucy, and going back to the water. You know what I mean? So with oral history, if we listen to our oral history talk, we have to take this serious, but at the same time, look at the metaphors behind it. So, example now, I was speaking to the Maasai tribes of Kenya. They're talking about their journey to Egypt, for example. And it's not like, for example, when we're studying it, like when these archaeologists, anthropologists, they're telling it from a different perspective. So the Maasai tribes can't talk about going along the Nile from Kenya because they have to talk about first going across Lake Victoria, for example. So when they're explaining things about going back and forth to Egypt, so what the great thing is about this, I'm seeing almost a unification basically from them. I'm not saying everything was perfect. Yes, there was different elements of spirituality. And like I mentioned earlier, a lot of different Africans brought stuff to Egypt. So if you're bringing this idea, then this country's bringing this idea. Many different ideas are coming into one.
Well,
and then obviously,
true.
You know what I mean?
You know, the way we see like the land, the earth.
Well, I'm not saying you're wrong, Patrick. I'm just saying, just saying like.
No one's wrong. There's no right or wrong.
I'm not
right.
It's a good point you made.
I know you're not.
Yeah, man.
You're just explaining how we see it.
Yeah, that's it.
So, you know, sorry,
John,
what
I just wanted
to Michelle?
I don't know.
I don't know.
All right, yeah.
No,
so you know, like you look at the earth, the soil, and you would see that as the mother. That's where Mother Earth comes from. And there's all. I'm going to correct myself as well. You know, I said O'Shea. It's Ocean. They're called the Ocean.
Yeah.
And
it's a Yoruba thing, isn't it?
Yeah, and it's in many other African coming back. Not to say it's unified, and they're all doing the same thing, but there's variations of it in different cultures because people have legs and they move. They're not trees. There's always movement, you know, and sharing. So you have. Has anyone heard of Mami Wata?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Right, well, Mami Wata. So you have like a lot of these things, right? Not to say that there is a deity called Mami Wata, but just to say that the people
The
acknowledge the
story of
living
it.
force of the earth and the living force of the water. You know what I mean? And you know what I mean? They portrayed it in those ways, and they told stories, right? Using these characters to bring about a greater understanding. Whether you
So,
whether you wanted to take it as a physical history or as a beautiful learning thing was up to you.
Yeah,
Do
yeah,
you know what I
yeah.
mean? Because either way, you're still going to learn if you take it
can,
on.
can I
Yeah.
jump in there if you don't
Yeah,
Yes,
mind?
man.
King.
Continue with
It's
this,
what Raz
because
was saying there
yeah,
was so perfect because, in honesty, much of these African traditions, as you know them as energies or what have you, gods or worth, are literally allegories
mm,
of putting these energies into a human form so that people can relate to them.
Yes.
yeah,
So all the Oguns, all these different Orishas and different energies, they are actual manifestations of energies that didn't live a human life as we
Yes.
perceive them. And the people knew how to connect to them because there's an understanding that body can speak to body, but spirit
Absolutely.
speaks to spirit. And there, in your
Yes.
spirit sense, you can communicate with any energy because I hear what everyone is saying, but the African tradition, in its rawest form, was the development of you as an individual. It was
Yes.
the
yeah,
development of your connection to your ancestral realm, to the ancestors of the earth, and to the earth, the elements, and everything. It's a much
Absolutely.
expanded thing with you
Yes.
being able to communicate with everything and bring what you want into manifestation because you have a good relationship with it. You
That's
have a
right.
good relationship with the earth spirits, water
Yes.
spirits, air spirits, fire spirits, and you understand that the visual manifestation of these energies is not where it's at. It's the intelligences that create these manifestations
Yes.
that exist within your body already. Hence, you can create heat,
That's
you
right.
can create water, you can create earth, and you can create air. So, all of
Hmm.
this is really a relationship with you and understanding the complexity of the energies within you and how you can let go of the world as you understand it, because that's whole thing is like a woman dancing to entice you to bring you
Yes.
out of yourself. And
Yes.
before you know, you're worshiping her, leaving your energy behind. And she's telling you to leave your energy with these different people so that they can use it to manifest what they want. And
Mm.
that's how it works with the religions,
Yes.
taking people's energies and making them manifest what
Collectively.
they want.
Yeah. Yeah.
yeah.
Yeah?
Well,
Yeah. Yeah.
interesting thing.
Was always you. It was
Mm,
never anyone else. As soon as someone
You
says,
was your own church. Yeah.
thank
You
you.
was the church. You was the star.
I
You know
remember
what I mean?
Curtis. Remember
And
Curtis.
the
Yeah.
cathedral.
I'm gonna go ahead, continue what you're saying,
So
and I'm gonna bring Curtis in. Sorry, go on, Edson.
your
Yeah,
mind is the altar. Remember,
yeah,
your mind is the altar. You don't need an altar because your
That's
mind
right.
is where you connect with all
Yes.
the different energies that you're calling on.
The
True.
church is the
True.
people,
okay.
not a
Now, yeah,
physical structure,
Curtis.
isn't it?
Curtis, let me
Mm.
bring Curtis in because we missed the turn now. So, Curtis, now you remember last time you mentioned about half of us knows the truth,
Mm.
and half is the other filtered stuff and what we've been fed and what we've been raised upon. But you see that half that knows the truth, it totally relates to what Edison's saying. Basically, the truth being within us, all that knowledge is there, all the elements are there, the ingredients, everything is there. Just focusing on the side that really knows itself, like in, we always say, know thou self, you know what
Know
I'm saying?
thyself. Yeah, know
Yes, that's
thyself.
it. If you,
And
I
see
don't,
my act be true.
that's it, man. The
Mm.
balances. So I want you to weigh in on this one now because it
Mm.
relates. I want to go over relate now.
Yeah, well, when you look at Jesus, where did he die? Like his physical form, though, I mean, as a human.
I don't know. Was it Egypt or was it Jerusalem?
Calvary, which means the
See.
skull. It means the skull. And
Mm.
then
Yes.
and so how many
Golgotha.
yeah,
Golgotha.
Golgotha, yeah. How
Mm.
many vertebrae do we have?
33.
33. Jesus died when he was 33.
Mhm.
Well, just in physical form.
Mm.
Do you know what I'm
Dr.
saying?
Vemis.
33,
So
33 steps of Solomon's temple.
yeah, so that's
Mm.
exactly, I was going to say that's built into the temple architecture and everything, and that's where the Freemasons and all of them type
Yeah.
of lot,
Yeah.
or the Freemasons,
Well,
Agree,
that
agree,
it
brother.
definitely ties
they've
in.
distorted that. They've
Yes.
Mhm.
distorted that because they say like the light bearer, but like as in Lucifer. Because that's a Luciferian religion. That's what
Yeah.
Freemasonry is. It's been insidious throughout history because people didn't like it, and you know what I mean. So that's it's interesting, isn't it? Though that like when you say your body's a temple and then your temple's there, and you have to take those
Exactly.
33 steps to get to there.
But you
And
see the secret side.
what did he call the source of the operation? They say the headquarters,
See when we use the
east,
word
west, north, and south.
I
And
just want
that's the
to
cross, the
I just
points
want to
of the
bring up
cross.
something with the masonry. See the word secret societies, for example, now. So
Yeah.
you know, like a lot of this metal iron working and all this,
Mm. Mm.
when people use iron for warfare, people were keeping this on the low. It's happened in a lot of empires. The time when the Assyrians, for example, conquered Egypt, these were using steel. We were still using bronze. We
Mm.
had the technology, but we didn't apply it to warfare. We used it for domestic purposes.
Mm.
So it's very interesting when we look at like secret society. It can mean many different things. It could even be just like we were saying before, all these different spiritualities. These what you call them again? The what's the word that we call these different spiritualities? Initiations. The
Yeah, yeah.
initiations. So they wouldn't just let anyone in initiate anybody. You get what I'm saying? So you'd have to there's a certain way for you to get into the brotherhood. I call it the brotherhood, just like
Mm.
they'll call it the brotherhood.
Mm.
So anyway, that's I want to bring let me bring you in, Patrick, anyway, on this now. On whatever you fit, speak on whatever you relate to on this discussion.
Um,
When we say secret, let me hit the question to you actually. See, like when we say secret societies.
Mm.
What's your view on that? Can you look at that like as in it's
well,
all bad, or can you look at it as it can be good and bad when we say secret societies?
well, obviously, I will say this without like um, trying to be a joke.
Yeah,
The
yeah, yeah,
term secret society, in a sense, that's why it's a secret society. So you're not
yeah,
gonna, people like me are not gonna know what much about it because it's a secret in
yeah,
that sense. You know what I
Well,
mean? So
Freemasons themselves don't call
no,
it
well,
a secret
yeah, you've asked me
society.
a question. Let me actually answer
Mm.
yeah,
it. You know what I mean? Rather than so I'm talking about me. If someone else knows more about it, then that's them. I can't answer for them. Yeah, I can only answer for me. I don't know the ins and outs of it. But what I will talk about is I'll come back to Kemet, stroke Egypt, is
mm,
what they call their mystery systems,
yeah,
which
Mm.
yeah, yeah,
that's all part of the same school of
Mm.
thought, if you want to call it that. Their mystery systems and their mystery systems were a secret, you know what I
yeah,
mean? And like, even the term Freemasonry, you know what I mean, to be back in them type of times in antiquity, if you were good, if you could build, these fantastical temples and structures and had the knowledge to do that, that was part of that mystery system. You know what I
yeah,
mean? To have that knowledge to do that, that's highly skilled and treasured knowledge. To be someone who could work wood, work metal, work
yeah.
stone,
Mm.
that's a serious, serious skill.
Iron
You know what I
smelting.
mean? Where,
Mm,
it's still a serious skill today, but just about anyone can become a bricklayer, but can the average bricklayer build them fantastical structures or
yeah,
temples or a big bridge or a bridge over the, Sydney Harbour or a bridge over this? There's a different levels of that type of skill and knowledge. So these mystery systems, as we know, we'll talk about when you look at the ancient Greeks, who a lot of their great scholars went and learned and got taught in Egypt when they learned about these mystery systems. You know, one of the most famed guys who's seen as like the father of democracy, I've heard him called Socrates,
Mm.
spent many years in Egypt learning the mystery systems, and when he came back, even with that type of knowledge and teachings, because Socrates apparently never wrote anything down. He just gave sermons and talks. It was people like Plato, a pupil of his later, who wrote about what he taught. But Socrates was vilified by the Greek authorities because what was seen as then as democracy, he was opposed to that. and he was executed and made to drink hemlock. You know what I mean? And killed as a reason, because they said he was corrupting the youth by some of the things that he knew himself. Because, you know, if you can go to Egypt and learn the mystery systems, you're not the average person, the average Joe doesn't go to Egypt and learn the mystery system. These are very philosophical, highly intellectual, educated people who get that privilege to go there and with that connection and learn them things. So, you know, and you just go into a higher teachers, like you said, oh, I've done a degree course and I'm going now to do a PhD and a master's and whatever. You're going on to a higher level of learning. You know what I mean? So that mystery system in modern days, you know, it's been changed, corrupted, if you want to use the word, to secret societies, this and that. And within that, like with anything, like with religion, if you take everyone's religion in isolation, it all teaches peace and love and treats everyone equal and blah, blah, blah. But then you have man and his imaginations, as it refers to in the Bible text. And when you imagine things, you can imagine what you want. Yeah. And then that's when religion or the teachings of any religion, gospel, can become corrupted, because man can use it then to serve his own nefarious needs. Because religion itself is not the spirituality, is not the essence, is not the God being. Religion is a way of life. That's what it ultimately is. You religiously do something every morning. If you get up and brush your teeth, you religiously do it. It's got nothing to do with God or praying or anything. It's something that's done in the same way all the time. You know what I mean? That's ultimately what religion means. But it's taken into everyday meaning, where as soon as someone mentions religion, it's God, it's this, it's
yeah,
that.
because of what's happened with religion, though. I mean, like them other things you mentioned, what you religiously do, that's sort of like what we've got to do to live and survive.
Yeah,
with like
it's a way of life, yeah, but
a lot of the
things get corrupted, and a man
yeah,
uses it to serve his own purpose, his own
that's what I
greed,
mean. Yeah,
his
yeah,
own
yeah,
lust, you know, the 7 deadly sins, to serve
yeah.
anyone or all of them. Man uses things like that to manipulate people. And it's like the book I mentioned in another talk we've had in the past, by Carter Godwin Woodson,
Yeah.
Miseducation of the Negro. He talks about, at that time, a lot of people, you know, and there's black people, he's talking about the miseducation of them. They're following Christianity from the way the people who enslaved them interpreted it. So when they do it, they're not actually benefiting their own people. And then a lot of them just then used it to manipulate their own people and realize, if I do this, I can do a collection. We still see that to this day. People evangelize and do collections, and they've got private jets, they've got $1,000 suits, crocodile shoes, a fleet of cars, and all of that. And you know, they're manipulating people's good nature for their own personal ends. You know what I mean? Because at the end of the day, if you believe, if you want to take it as a physical form, you have the devil, you have God. The devil has to be versed in the Bible or in any scripture, whether it be the Quran or the Torah, or the devil has to be versed in that in order to be able to manipulate it to then corrupt you. And you know, just like I said before, the best liar is the person who knows the truth. Yeah. So when you go into Egypt and study it, or when you go into any people's culture and study it and know the truth, then you can now create the best lie to hide that truth, to manipulate it, to pull the wool over people's eyes, to be that wolf in sheep's clothing amongst them.
Yeah.
Like the saying goes, you know, the sheep puts all this trust in the farmer all these years, not realizing at some point the farmer going to eat you. You know what I mean?
Well, you know what? Let me
tell you about the wolf.
come to
It's
Raz
time
now.
to watch out for the wolf, and it's end up the farmer eats you more than the wolf. You know what I mean? So it's that type of analogy.
So here's a question I want to kind of keep to this topic, Raz.
I wanted, just before you did that, I wanted to throw in something related to the question, because you asked the question about Freemasonry and secret societies.
Yeah.
And I would like to throw a 2 pence on that.
Okay, then I'll come back in and ask you what I was going to ask you, but basically was we're going to come to religion, and is it good for Africa? Is it basically from what we had in the beginning? But go ahead, speak about yourself, and then let me reload the question.
Well, it's all connected, you see, so it's all the same thing.
Okay,
it's all the same thing.
Yeah.
What I wanted to say was, when it comes to Freemasonry is directly out of Kemet,
Yeah.
and it's been stolen and corrupted in the same way Christology or Christianity was as well, right? So what's getting pushed, I love African traditional forms of spirituality, right? Or African-based Christology, Christianity, right? Because anything else is the slave master's view getting pushed onto you, and then therefore you're getting caught up in, and you're learning. This is a part of self-hatred as well, because then you start looking at this model like it's the benchmark of everything, and you're African, which is the originator of that. You're beginning to look at your traditions as a bunch of mumbo jumbo, and you start informing to hate it and hate yourself invariably. And when it comes to masonry, they were the builders. They were the builders who built the earth, who mapped the stars, who built in accordance with it, who put S-bends in the Nile and irrigation, and came with all these things. Even the medical model. I work in the NHS, so when it comes to like medical tools that you will see in a surgery in any hospital, they were based on the same ones that you see in Kemet. So not much came from that. Even the caduceus, that symbol of
the snake
comes from Africa. A lot of things, even ABC. So what we have to know is, before we spoke about languages, I think, in a couple of weeks ago, and we spoke about language with non-verbal communication. We spoke of messages being conveyed via the drum, via smoke, via dance, or mimicking nature, or the zoo types, the animals, right? So Freemasonry is something that's being taken from us, repackaged, right? Yeah. Now, when it comes to secret societies, it all depends what a secret is, because that word secret, like things are secreted from your body, right?
Could be sacred.
The secretion of your oil. You were talking about before about the vertebrae, how many vertebrae. Well, the chakras and all that runs up from the base all the way up to the brow, right? And that could be seen as the 7 churches of Asia, because even within those 33 vertebrae is seven appendages for where the vertebrae is, right? Now, the secrecy, we have to wonder, well, what's meant by secret then? Because who is the secretary then? The secretary is a word that we just take for granted, is the keeper of the secret. And that's why it's top secret and confidential. So we're living in a world where certain people are being denied certain things because they're not of the club, or they're not of a particular racial background or cultural background. You know what I mean?
Let me just sorry.
Can I jump in as well, James?
Please,
if you don't mind?
What I need to add on. Okay, what we'll do is I wanted to come to the point of, like, you add on to what he's saying, but what I want to go around and speak about is religion. Is it done damage for Africa, or is it done good for Africa? And compare it to what we had in the beginning, our spirituality. That's where I wanted to go next. But continue what you're saying.
But I want Edison to come in.
In honesty, so the thing is, thankfully, I was around in Nigeria to know about secret societies.
Yeah.
And many of the chieftains would belong to secret Ogbonis and things like that, where essentially these guys would have competitions every year to see who's got the best power or who's got the best magic. Where there were the old shooting of the guns, walking through walls, doing all different things like that, making it rain, standard things like that. They would have a competition every year to see who has the power to be able to
who's the big daddy
reality. Who can manipulate reality. Exactly. And then see who's like, oh yes, this year we give it to you. So they'll go and look for this. Now the thing is, there would be many covens where the witches would hold on to. And there's a load of egg bays as well, where egg bay would be what do you call it? An actual being that they would know to be able to put into a vessel and they would be able to, especially in times of war, this being would be called to go on fights on their behalf that would be killing people. These beings, these actual beings that would be in their what do you
Mm.
call it, in their egg bay, they needed blood. This is why a lot of things happened when Nigeria changed over to Christianity. These egg bays were still killing members of the family because there was no more wars. Everything was Christian and they still needed blood. So they would
Mm.
take members of the family and kill them to feed their energy. So they would have different energies that would exist in different places, in trees and this. And it would be a certain group that would know about that energy and have access to it. So therefore, the secret would be that they belong to this group, they belong to that, and all of them would have their own energies, which they could either use to fight against each other or just have it to protect their villages and where they are. So now we have the paradigm of also the Babalaos, yeah,
Mm.
or the original medicine men. And what these guys would do is you would bring them a problem, a situation. We need to do this. We need to do that. We need to invent this. We would need to invent that. They would go on the other side, speak to certain energies, and these energies would tell them how to do it. So these
Yeah.
guys would be able to do anything. You'd be amazed. Like, create. If someone says, "Oh, we need this person to die, or we need this person to lose weight," because I was finding some recent ones where they were coming up with weight losing formulas. Mad as it is, they would go and say, "We want to achieve this. How would you do it?" The person would speak to whatever energy that doesn't have a human form that would tell them how to do it, and they would know how to do it. So when you're speaking of was Africa better off before, 1,000%, because they were
Yeah.
tapping into reality and
And
they were tapping into the realities within themselves and
yeah.
being able to manifest things that didn't exist.
So would you say
Yeah,
with religion, sorry, Edison,
yeah,
would you
go
say
ahead.
with religion now, like for example, you see the
Mm,
mysticism, this is
yeah,
basically where we're going with it. Don't you think that religion kind of uh, contradicts itself to a point where, like, if a man walks on water, raises the dead, raises from, resurrection and all that, isn't that like a contradiction to say, well, they demonize not just only African spirituality from around the world, for example, where, a lot of people spoke about every living thing having a soul, from the trees, like you mentioned,
yeah, of course.
from the water, the rocks, mountains, everything, had their purpose.
Mm,
So you see with religion, like, where it's like,
mm,
that's the only one that's able to have their mysticism, but they won't call it mysticism. It has to be like, well, this prophet came down, he done all these
yeah,
miracles. But
Well, it
if you
was
really think
the
about it,
reality is it
Jesus,
was forced onto the people,
yeah,
wasn't it, on a global
thank
level?
you.
The Roman Catholic Church went
yeah.
out there
Yeah,
systematically, got rid of any competition, and forced their thing onto people over time.
of
So
Right?
course.
Jesus would have been a mystic,
So
if you know
much
what I
so
mean.
that
Well, yeah,
you lost
You
So
know
your
what I'm saying?
that's
sense
the
of
Roman
self
Empire,
and got a
isn't it? The
model.
Roman
Yeah.
Empire became the Catholic Church, the Roman Catholic Church,
This is what I'm
and
saying.
conquered the
Europe
world,
didn't really
passing on the
fall.
religion.
It didn't. You're right. Europe did not fall in that sense. What happened was
Hmm.
Rome just transformed itself into a church. So
Yeah.
Yeah.
the Roman Empire became the
is the
Holy.
Pope. Yeah, man.
Yeah,
Mm.
man.
Hmm.
Yeah. So if you get where I'm coming from with this, what I mean
Yeah.
is like, we have to,
Yeah.
if you're going to say this is mysticism from these tribes, these indigenous people from around the world before they had the modern day religions, then mysticism that has to be within religions, but it's like they try to disguise it where, like, it's this prophet that did this, he walked on water, raised the dead, done all these miracles basically. So wouldn't you
Hmm.
consider Jesus Christ as a mystic?
Well, he grew up in Egypt, don't forget.
Yeah.
Yeah, man. So that's where he learned all that from,
Yeah. One
in
sec,
Egypt.
Curtis.
Hmm.
Yeah, so the mysticism is big around the world, but Curtis, you were coming in on this. You seem like you had something to say on when I mentioned about
It
Jesus
was,
being a mystic.
yeah, and then I was just thinking about the when we talk about the Freemasons and stuff, that it's not a secret society because loads of people are openly Freemasons and they wear the rings and everything. And some of the rings is just like a normal ring, and then you turn it round. That was in what was it called? From Hell. Did you ever see that movie? It was based on a
Johnny Depp.
novel. Yeah, Johnny
Was that
Depp.
Johnny
Yeah,
Depp
yeah,
about Jack
man.
the Ripper and all that?
Yeah.
Mhm.
And
So do you see Jesus as a mystic, would you say?
well, yeah, like that's what I'm
Yeah,
saying. He
yeah,
grew up in
yeah,
Egypt. Do you know
yeah,
what I mean? So and the reason that they went there because they blended with everybody there, like the phenotype.
yeah.
Do you know what I mean? You wouldn't hide somewhere where everyone looks different from you, and
I
they had
must
to
Because
go
say,
into
as
hiding.
well, a lot of those institutions, they have an inner circle and an outer circle. And
Yeah,
the outer circle don't really know what's going on in the inner circle.
that's what I
mm,
was
So
gonna
that
yeah,
say
yeah, yeah, yeah.
before.
The, 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 the higher degrees and all that one. Yeah,
Yeah,
yeah, yeah, yeah,
you get revealed each step of the way, and
yeah.
that's why
same with the church. Same with the church.
yeah, man. And then
You
so
know what
there's
I
the
mean?
33 and a third degree Mason,
Mm.
which is the toppest that you can get, as far as we know. There's probably someone, Klaus Schwab, probably that
Well,
does
I
even.
think the Africans dealt with 360 degrees, my friend, not
But
33. That's just like
no,
one tenth of.
no, but that's just the degrees that you go through in
No, I
Freemasonry.
realized that. No,
Yeah.
I realized that. But they were dealing with 360 degrees, brother, in the
Another
Mm.
sense of
thing, if you
mapping
No,
out
like,
the
but can I just
stars.
make the point? I still haven't got to the
yeah,
punchline.
because there's levels of like,
Freemasonry is a society with secrets, and there's
yeah,
loads of them all over the earth with different names.
yeah.
It's not a
So,
secret society because people are
mm,
openly part of it.
yeah,
Do you know what I mean? When it gets to those nasty levels down in hell,
Mm.
do you know what I mean? Like Bill Gates, Klaus Schwab, who was the only German person who still speaks with a Nazi accent. And you know
Mm.
the World Economic Forum.
yeah.
Have you seen him? Did I show
He's
you him?
probably family to Charles, brother. They're probably
Yeah, oh
related.
yeah, yeah, the
So
You know what I
dragon.
mean?
let me get to the before we start going round. Yeah, do you see religion as an issue that became a problem in Africa, or do you see it's good for Africa, or you're neutral on it? Where would you stand with that,
But
Curtis?
when you say religion, are you meaning
What would
non-African religions?
yes, yes, yes,
Okay.
yes. So Curtis,
Yeah, but everybody's created a religion of some kind.
no, we're talking about outside. We're talking about outside. So when outside religions, Abrahamic religions in particular, I'll concentrate on them.
Oh, okay,
When they've come
okay.
into Africa, do you think it's been good for Africa, or do you think it's problematic for Africa, even from where we are today to back
I
then?
reckon, I mean, how could only say personally, it depends what tribe or you know what I mean, like whether that's okay for them personally, because everyone's not the same, or they don't, the similarities, obviously, do you know what I mean, and loads of links and everything, but at the end of the day, I don't know really on that one because, you know, people just, some people might align already with versions of things that are similar. And so they assimilate it into their culture because it
Yeah.
fits in the jigsaw pieces for them.
But
Some
when you
people will
say
be like,
assimilate, I mean, if something's, it depends how it comes in as well. If it's coming in like, oh, someone has this great idea for you, oh yeah,
Mhm.
I'll take that. That's useful because we don't have that. But if it's the way religion came in, Abrahamic religion into Africa, I mean, you see that I'm coming from that perspective. Has it done Africa any good, or is it demonized Africa? Better way of
well,
putting it.
well, before everything was all mapped by, you know, the Western Europeans mainly, but before all that, people did have like similarities more because don't forget, that wasn't seen as the Middle East. It wasn't called the Middle East. It was part of Africa. It always has been.
But I think what I mean is like the organized religions of like
Mm.
not the practices, because don't get me wrong, a lot of these practices exist in Kemet. Circumcision existed, even not eating pork. Fasting existed. There was a lot of things that existed. So the practices, it's not so much about the practices. I'd
Mm.
say more it's the book, like the more so the indoctrination of it. You know, you will go to hell if this and that. You know, so
But that's not necessarily in the Bible, as far as I know, not in the New Testament.
so where does that come
That you will
from?
go that you'll go to
Comes from
hell.
the church, bro. Nicene Creed and those other
Yeah.
creeds. That to out to
Mm.
scare. Because if you scare the people, you can control them, innit?
But
Anxiety.
then, but it was really the Middle Ages that came up in Western Europe.
Mm.
When you check it, obviously you had you had Constantinople. And
So
then
if you look
after
at the
that,
population in Africa to this day, there's a lot of them are like Catholics or the
oh yeah, man,
Christians.
yeah.
So we have a vast number of people. I know we have other religions, Islam one of the the next biggest and that. But is it doing Africa any good? Do you feel like it's dividing Africa as a people, or like that's what I'm
Can I
trying to
can
get
I
to?
can I come
Can I
in on
jump
it?
in,
Yeah,
James?
yeah, go on.
Can I jump in?
Well,
Can
let
I jump
Patrick.
in?
Yeah, go on
Oh,
then, and then Patrick comes straight
I,
in. Sorry.
I only say that because I have to unfortunately go
Yeah,
and
no
get
problem.
through the tunnel. But
Yeah.
what I would say is one of the saddest thing undocumented is how many chiefs died so that Christianity could take over their village.
Yeah.
It's not documented, but is that where the chief didn't wanted to keep his own traditions? One of the saddest things we don't think about is how in Africa the days of the week are about European gods. These guys
Mm.
had their own structures. They didn't have 7-day weeks. The 7 days is all about the seven shiny ones, the Greek, the Roman gods that they used to worship. That's why you have 365 days in a day, because they gave 5 extra days for the shiny Mercury, whatever, Venus, all those different things. That's why, again, days of the week connected to those Thor gods, connected to those, or they're connected to those, what do you call it, Roman gods. And we no longer have our own time frame. We're not connected to the energy of the land. Everything is based on this 7-day principle that they're pushing through. The Western traditions have all been based on removing your connection to yourself and putting your faith in an external idea. So all
Yeah.
I need to do then, I need to control you. Whatever term you say, I am a Christian, you lost your identity. I
Mm.
am a Muslim, you lost your identity. I am black, you lost your identity because you do not own the labels by which you're now identified. You don't own the history. You don't know all the stories that are connected to it. So now you're in a position where someone externally is telling you who you are, taking out your next generation of children, making sure you don't teach them who they are and where they come from, and now imposing upon them all these different religions. You have noticed, have you ever noticed that all the wars in the world, the holy wars, which country is owned by a religion? What were these holy wars fighting for? They were fighting for the right to educate your children so that now your children follow their belief systems. So they will have them as customers for the rest of their life.
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
Africa was always about all these religions by the Romans that came and conquered the world, brought their religion with them, brought time with them, brought education with them about their concepts, and brought the concept of money from their version. Africa
Yeah.
always had their ones, but they brought the metal. So we're living in a world where the people that control time and the people that control the religions are the ones now controlling your essence to prevent you from actually accessing yourself because you've been programmed to believe you've got to give all due to this God first.
Yeah.
Okay,
Yep.
so say for example, in
Mhm.
Western Europe, let's just use for an example, yeah.
Mm.
Do you think that didn't just happen internally? Because it seems like that's human nature. It's not just on one particular group of people or anything like that. That's human nature.
But,
People on look, let's look at
Conquered the
London.
world with
Look at
religion.
London.
Yeah.
You live in a tenement block. There's another tenement block next to it. So
yeah,
you've got to stab them to death then. They're wearing red, they're wearing blue. My God, we need to do something about this. That's how
That's a
stupid people
great
can be.
example, though, of
That's
having
how
your mind
stupid people
controlled.
can be, man.
that's it.
Yeah,
Because
No, but
someone created.
that's a
generally, I
great
mean, that's
example of having
Can
your
I,
worldwide.
mind
That's
controlled.
worldwide,
Patrick.
man.
Yeah. Yeah. Go.
can
What do you
I
say,
can I come
Patrick?
It's
in just
worldwide domination.
Yeah.
It's a
just to
it's a
expand on
symptom of
what
having your
Edison
mind
said
controlled and
and what
hating
Curtis
yourself
said?
and
Just to
hating your brother and your
uh,
sister.
expand on that a little bit, and
Yeah.
the question in general about what's religion done to Africa. I wouldn't even just. But it's not what religion's done to Africa. It's what man has done to Africa, because the religions, whatever religion it is, yeah, whether it be Africa or Europe or anywhere, has been used to manipulate people. And people stay to the true essence of any religion, because they are in the opening sections of the Quran. It constantly talks about the people of the scripture, yeah. So they're referring to people who already have a religion, and it's not referring to them in a derogatory way. It's basically showing them respect. You know, the first followers of Islam who were persecuted went to Ethiopia and sought refuge because there was a righteous Christian king there.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? Who didn't want to indoctrinate them, and they didn't go there to indoctrinate him and say, you must now become Muslim. And they didn't say, because you're chilling here and you're getting refuge, you must become Christian. Yeah. So the essence of any religion is good, but man is the bad thing. It's man who's corrupted Africa. Yeah. One of the a good example is Frederick Douglass. If anyone's ever read you know, Life and Time. I can't remember the exact name of it, but it's looking at me there. But any better glasses to see the title of the book. But anyway,
man write religion, write the books as well. So,
but Frederick Douglass said, you know, the Christian version, I mean, the Western version, the slave trader version of Christianity, he feared, prior to him escaping slavery, he feared the slave trader who claimed to be Christian more than the one who didn't, because he only had to look a certain way and he accused you of having the devil in you and wanted to beat him out of you. You only had to talk in a certain tone of voice, and again, you were accused of the devil's corrupting you to make you sound or to act this way, and he wanted to beat it out of you. So and that's man's interpretation, yeah? And it's always down to man, because like I said before about man corrupting things and using it for his own nefarious ends, to corrupt, to rule, to gain power. That's nothing to do with the religion itself. You know, even the concepts of hell and that, again, like Curtis said, like Nick said, that's brought in to frighten the people. If you can frighten the people and indoctrinate them in a certain way, you can rule them. And just remember, just remember as well, at the time, because you mentioned about, although the name wasn't used, what's it called, the Inquisition, but we talk about the persecution of people. At them times that was going on, this lasted for something like 500-600 years. You know what I mean? Only ended in like not long, much over 100 odd years ago. You know what I mean? But we seem to think it only happened 500-600 years ago, but it carried on for hundreds of years. In them times, what you got to remember is before the translation of the Bible into different languages, and English in particular, is if you was able to read, you had somebody reading off a scroll telling you that you're corrupted by the devil by being able to read. Because by you being able to read, you could expose their skullduggery. You could read what they could read. You know, if you could do maths, they would tell you that the devil's numbers and all these different things. And the same people who were telling you that were excellent at maths. They were excellent at reading. As I said, they would be reading
heads off.
Yeah, they'd be reading off a document telling you that fact you can read. You know, you're being possessed by the devil. So this is the type of thing, because they realize if these people actually read the scripture for themselves, they'll realize that we're a fraud, and it doesn't say that in their holy book. It doesn't say this in their holy book, so we've got to stop them from reading it for themselves.
That's
so
why
we don't want them.
We don't
want them to translate it. We want it to be, and even in modern times, you've got like especially the Roman Catholic tradition, you've got people who speak in Latin. They don't even understand what they're speaking.
The mass was said in Latin, bro.
Said in Latin, but they don't even actually know what they're saying. They've just learned.
Exactly.
They've just learned how to say it. They've just learned how to say it, but they don't actually. If someone said to them, now tell me what that is in English or in Spanish or in Italian, they couldn't, because they don't know.
Well, you know what?
Yeah, right. So these things are corrupting.
Here's an important thing. The doorway, opening the doorway of religion now.
Just let me finish off this last point.
Go on, Patrick.
The last point, just jumping back to the mysticism bit.
Yeah.
And looking at someone like Moses when he was... Moses was in competition with the Egyptian priests as to what miracles they could perform. So it wasn't, so when you talk about certain people performing miracles, not people could perform different tricks or whatever you want to call them, miracles or tricks or magic. And he was in, he would do something. The Pharaoh would have his priests do the same thing and say, well, nah, man, you're not as good as you say you are. So we do something else, and they'd have them do the same thing and say, no, you're not as good as you are. So a lot of it's all about deception because we live in a time, not just in Africa, but across the world, because Europe's wars have always been over religion, as Edison was saying, the fighting over religion, who can rule and who can push their belief system onto you.
And they would use religion as a tool of war.
And yeah,
They
because
would use it
if
as
you
a
look
tool
at the
of war.
conquest of South America, what did they do? To fight off and kill all the people, that's going to make you lose a lot of people. So you befriended them. And once you captured the king, you can then rubbish their God and their religion and say, look, it can't protect you. We've captured your king. We've
That's right.
captured this. Quetzalcoatl can't protect you because we've just captured your head of state. And we've even took the most holiest relics and we've destroyed them or we've burnt them or we've took them away. So they're not as powerful as our Christian God because people, even um, within them societies who they conquered, they weren't perfect, whether they were in Africa or in South America or wherever, because a lot of them were using things to corrupt people. Like man who studied the heavens and the stars would say he's just made the sun black out, but he just knew when an eclipse was coming.
That's very present. That's very like nowadays. Do you know what I mean?
Let me bring you back in a sec, Kate. 1 second, yeah. I just want to talk about the door opening to the religions in Africa, for example. So you see, we go to Akhenaten, yeah, and he wanted to banish all the deities and that. But just before, you had the Hyksos invasion, like the different dates, 1675 BC, 1750 BC. So when the Hyksos coming in and they can be referred to the shepherd kings, whatever, but these came in with nothing to contribute, basically. Famine, nomadic peoples.
Well, they were fleeing because there was all kinds of.
Let me just finish now. Yeah. So when they've been driven out, of Egypt now, back to the miserable existence. So the problem is like all this campaigning and all this stuff. Yeah. When Akhenaten agreed to banish the deities now, what he's done to the indigenous peoples, he's turned the backs on them. And this is going to be later. Those people called Hyksos are now building temples in Jerusalem, and then this spreading something called, I don't know when they used the letter J. I know it's only 500 years old, but they're spreading something like they're the Hebrews now, basically. You know what I mean? So and then so that's opening the doorways now. I know you can say, oh, we started monotheism. No, Africa had even Patard and certain other people who spoke about.
That's ubiquitous as well.
So now you get to the time of in Ethiopia, Queen Makeda, Queen of Sheba, whatever you want to call her. Yeah, when she marries Solomon, now she decides to banish, do the same thing as what Akhenaten done. So now you've got to look at the Ethiopians now, looking at we're worshipping the god of the Jews, or the whoever you want to call them at that time. So all these now, if you think how the indigenous people felt, it'd just be like, it's like, even though there's multiple different things going on here, they've come in now, and by accepting outsiders, then you're going against the indigenous peoples, the millions of indigenous peoples, and you've then basically lost your culture. So now, when you practice your spirituality, you're being demonized even by your own people when this concept has come from outside. So and then you can go on with what the Arabs, the pale Arabs did with Islam. So anyway, I don't want to go on too long, but I was trying to make a point.
Just wanted to say, okay.
I was trying to make a point on when indigenous knowledge, wisdom, spirituality is destroyed. And I'm not saying it's whether or not good or bad, but it's the essence, back to what we were saying.
I want to say, right, what we understand or may understand what Hebrews or Israelites are, right, actually is coming from Africa, right?
Yep.
And when it's obvious that if we're looking for what we think is Hebrew culture, Israelite culture, right, you're not going to see it in the British Museum. You're not going to see it in the Smithsonian in DC. You're not going to see it in the Louvre in Paris. So you have to ask yourself, well, has it been misrepresented in history? Because I'm looking at, like, when you look at Moses and the story of Moses, I'm thinking it's likely it was Thoth Moses, You know,
Thank
there
you.
was a song in the
Yeah,
70s.
yeah,
There was
Exactly,
a song.
Satmos.
yeah.
That's
Yeah,
right. Yeah,
there was a song in the
Totally
in
right.
the
yeah.
70s by a guy called Rod Taylor, and this was before I could read books and that. So I
Mm.
listened like reggae music, roots reggae kind of opened up my mind. And he was saying, I think it was about 1976. He was saying King Moses, he was a black man. King Solomon, he was a black man. King David, he was a black man from Africa, right? So all I'm saying is, when you go
Mm.
to the British Museum, you've got the Phoenicians, you've got the Sumerians, you've got, you know, the Egyptian, all the. So where's the Egypt? Where's the Hebrews? It's quite obvious, right, that there's some misrepresentation, and we have to
Oh, the
think like that.
whitewash, isn't it? Yeah,
I'm just saying. I'm just saying. Now, with the original question about has religion caused a problem in Africa, right?
mm.
I would say religion has been used as a weapon
Mm.
in
Yeah.
Africa
Yeah,
on the people and to cut them away from their roots,
Used all over the
right?
place, wherever it is,
Mm.
it's being used as a weapon. Europe,
yeah.
It's
Africa,
being used as
everywhere.
a weapon, and the success was so
Mm.
beautiful. They said, okay, this is where, you know what Curtis mentioned before about you're in London, you're in one state, the other state, you want to fight
Mm-hmm.
them. It's a bastardization that's reached to that
Yeah.
because we're
Mm.
so far removed from ourselves and we hate ourselves so much that we want to kill somebody that looks like us or fight with them. And within 40 years, 30 years, we've seen that change. Because when I was a youth stepping around England, right, going and seeing sound system or running sound system, nobody wanted to stab me.
Mm.
Mm.
There was a love there. There was because we were more connected
Mm.
to the quest of trying to find our true identity in them times, and that's been scrubbed out. It's not completely dead, but it's been greatly scrubbed out. So
Mm.
I would say your question about as religion can mean many things. Well,
Mm.
the religion of the colonizers is definitely being used as a weapon. Now, the African Christianity, the one that in Ethiopia, right, even though there's a great similarities, there's also coming from a different thing because it wasn't influenced necessarily by outsiders in the same way. But
Mm.
it would be unfair to us to say um, the religion or Christianity or no, there's nothing wrong with Christianity. There's not wrong with Islam. If that's your thing, that's a beautiful thing, and may you live
Mm.
good and may you live in righteousness with your brother and sister. But
Mhm.
these things have been weaponized by the outside colonializers, and it's been
Mm.
put in place, and it's not over. We might think, oh, it ended. It didn't end. It's still going on.
Mhm.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? It's just going on in such a way where you can hide the truth right in front of your nose and you don't even see it because you've been brainwashed on that level not to see it. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah. Edison, okay.
Yeah.
If you
I'm gonna
uh,
have to fly now.
yeah, I wanted you
Um,
to, but you said that, so I want you to add it on, but also add with it, how can
mhm.
we keep our
Ah,
traditions
in no
intact?
time.
Well, here's a funny thing because whenever you're looking for a tradition, you're looking for a set of rules. You're looking for a new program and hoping that this program is going to somehow fix you. You're looking to some external being out there that's going to come, that's watching you every day, and is going to basically smooth your path through life. It's always going to be about you connecting with you because the problem we're going to have, and I learned it a long time ago, I can debate every story in the world and basically speak with authority about something I didn't witness. And if it's true or not, I don't really know. The only
Mm.
thing I know for sure, my mum made me and my dad created me. So that is my simple path. And from connection to those and appreciating that we live longer, as in we don't actually die, we're the essence inhabiting a body for a period of time. Once you can get to that connection of that, which is something not difficult, but it's not something everyone is looking for, because everyone's looking for some god to come out the sky, which all religion is based on sun worship anyhow. Let's not
Mm.
kid ourselves. Get in there, and
The
it's
Zodiac.
astrotheology.
Yeah.
Yeah, so it's all that. Amen
Mm.
is amen in another way. So
Mm.
it's all based on that concept of people realizing that without the sun, we can't survive. So that's where they've sort of made it sound great, but it's effectively all the ancient religions of all the time thinking of that. But no, it's always going to be let the stories go, let the traditions go. Try and understand that intelligence, which is the essence of yourself, and see how the ancients were able to use that to manifest what they want. Everyone is always fighting to control what you think, how you can see it, and what you can aspire to always make sure that you never grow beyond their control.
Mm.
Well, I connect to
Because you
I
change
connect to
things.
being a free spirit. That's what I always
Mm,
connect to, a free spirit. And
mm.
I can connect to indigenous peoples all over the world, and I I feel like a sense of true spirit when I'm connecting to them. That's the
Yeah,
point. That's my journey, and I've learned that along on my journey to be a free spirit. I want to connect to the Eta people in the Philippines, say. I connect to them. If I'm going to take part in some of their rituals, I will do. And don't get me wrong, there's certain rituals you don't have to necessarily take part in. Sometimes people feel like they've got to go all the way head first in there. I do what I'm comfortable with. So that's I've always had that philosophy of connecting as a free spirit to
thank
most
you.
indigenous groups around the world, and I will see a connection automatically, and I see how they treat me. You know what I mean? So
Well, that's it. If you take the
yeah,
essence of any belief system that
yeah,
is based on a supreme being, and you
yeah,
take the essence of it, then there's no animosity, there's no hostility in there, and there's a mutual respect. You know what I mean?
yeah,
That was the point I made before about the early
mm,
Islamists who were persecuted went to a Christian country to seek refuge, and
yeah,
neither tried to convert each other. Like Nick said, if you're a Muslim or if you're Christian or whatever, then peace and love and do your thing, respect you, because that's what it is. The religion itself is using that word religion is not the fault. The fault lies in the fallacy of man, of human beings. That's where it's then used to corrupt and to use the word Nick said,
mm,
weaponize against people to divide them, to rule them, to divide them, conquer them, and then ultimately rule them with
Mm,
relative ease. The different mechanisms change all the time as history goes on. They create new ways because when people start getting wise to it, you've got to create new ways to undo that wiseness and
yeah,
dumb them back down again. You know what
yeah,
I mean? And dumb them back down again. And so even down to when they allowed enough black people to take on Christianity at the abolition of slavery in America and going through that Reformation period. When they took on Christianity, they took it on in the enslaved mind sport of the enslaver, which is black people are inferior. And so they actually believed in their own inferiority and used the religion that was given to them, or that version of Christianity that was given to them by the slave master to actually, because if you shackle a man's hands, it will hurt and it will naturally try to break free. When you shackle a man's mind, he doesn't know, so he can't break free. And once
mm,
you can get him to think the way you want him to think, then you don't no need to brutalize him. He'll
He'll
yeah,
fight
brutalize
tooth and
himself.
nail.
Yeah,
He'll
he'll
fight
mm,
tooth and
brutalize
nail to
himself.
keep
Yeah,
them chains on his brain.
and
yeah,
he'll brutalize himself because you don't have to
Mm,
brutalize him. You don't have to beat him. He'll beat himself.
mm,
He'll beat his
mm.
neighbor. He'll beat his
And keep
father,
his
his
people
mother.
in check as well. Yeah,
You know what I mean? Because
true.
he's took on that, you've indoctrinated them, you've socially engineered them, and that's it. And then that's, mental slavery is the most powerful form of slavery because you don't
yeah,
need physical chastisement in order to keep order. But the people are brainwashed. It's like, what do they call it? Stockholm syndrome in modern
yeah.
terms, you know what I mean? Where you could be held captive by someone and you could leave the door open and you refuse to go free because
And
there's
it works
so,
like this, Patrick, where your mind's in jail, right? Your mind is in jail, right?
mm,
And you are the jailed and also the warder because the mind
I'm
fuck is
saying.
so severe, right? That like we're trained to keep our minds in jail.
Yeah.
And anything that takes us out of that jail is very uncomfortable. Don't like
Yep.
it.
Yeah.
yeah.
Well,
Raz,
it's a state of
I want
cognitive dissonance, isn't it? An
what
internal state of
what I was
cognitive
James,
going to
dissonance.
I'm
I want
gonna have to go, my friend.
All right,
Edison,
Edison.
man, it's been a pleasure, man.
Nice meeting
One
you.
question
brother.
before you go. If you
Go
just
ahead.
have, because this is the question for everybody. You can answer it as quickly as you want. Is Pan-Africanism, do you see this as a way to liberate black people? Pan-Africanism.
I'll quickly say I don't
Yeah.
know enough about it. I know there's many organizations,
If we
but
go
the
from
only
the
thing
Marcus
is,
Garvey,
yeah,
perspective, Edward
Marcus,
Blyden.
it's so annoying because Marcus Garvey wrote everything everyone needed to know. The blueprint was there of how it would be done. The
Yeah.
problem is, as always, there's not the money to convince the people to do it.
Yeah.
Yeah, if you
Okay.
didn't have religion is so rich. If if Christians were poor, no one would follow the religion. The same as Islam. So the same thing with Pan African. It's another type of religion to bring the people together. But what power they're gonna have? How is everyone gonna hear about them? Sometimes it has to be slightly more practical and down to earth. But that's my opinion. I'm sure everyone's has something different. You've got to try something, but you've got all these African congresses and all this kind of stuff. They are trying to economically rise themselves, but the Europeans will always try to destroy what they're creating because they know as soon as African takes control back of their minerals, the game is over.
Yeah, well, unifying, I mean, I'd say like the common cause, people recognizing the common cause. And I see the whole point of Pan-Africanism is a common cause for this, to liberate us. So all ideologies, your religion, this issue you've got, put it all to the side for the greater of our people. I mean, that's the way I see Pan-Africanism. So anyway, are you going on your drive now?
Yeah, I've got to
Yeah.
drive back. I'm in two different parts. I'm in London and I've got to drive all the way to Kent. And I've got to get through this tunnel before 12 o'clock because they charge you to come in London now. There's no such thing as free.
Oh,
So
well.
please, everyone, gentlemen, take
Take
care.
care, man.
Bless anyway.
Anytime
Bless.
you're
Come on,
around,
take care.
I'll be
Yeah.
around.
Yeah.
James,
Yeah.
invite me to the next one. I'll be there. All
Great.
right?
Thank you, man.
We'll be in touch, brother.
All right.
Thank you very much, bro.
See you later.
soon,
Great,
bro.
James. I
Yeah,
have to
man.
go myself,
Yeah, so you finish. Okay, before we're just going to do our last thing. Is
Yeah.
Pan-Africanism the way to liberate us, or do you have any other different ideas to
Well, you
liberate
see,
us?
no, what it is. I just think that, whatever you want to call it, it's just that I think it can be used. There's people in the Pan-African movement who are very conscientious and good movers, and you got people in the Pan-African organization who are quite corrupt. So it's just like anything else. I think Curtis was saying, to some degrees, human nature that's been taught meticulously through ages, right? But I'm saying,
I wouldn't
it's
say
just
that it's
really
human nature. That's been. I don't. That's not what I said.
What do you
say that again.
Whatever I think you just
What did I
paraphrased me.
say?
I can't remember.
What
You said
did
it
I
was
say?
like I can't remember, but it
Human
wasn't what I
nature or
said.
something?
Well, how do you know it?
Yeah.
How do you know it wasn't what you said if you couldn't remember?
Because I couldn't remember it, but I remembered me saying that I didn't
No,
say
you were
that.
saying something. Because listen, I was paraphrasing you from before when you said,
Yeah.
"This is human nature. It's not necessarily
Oh
belonging."
yeah, you
to
said
one
it was
culture."
human nature that's been taught, and I didn't say that. That's what I didn't
No,
say. Yeah.
no. I'm saying I didn't say you said that. If you listen to what I
You
was
actually
saying,
did.
I said, like
Well, we
Curtis,
got it on
let
video,
me
so when it
let me
gets
say,
rewound, you'll know.
yeah. Let me say what I said. Do you want me to say what I said?
I heard what you said.
I heard what I said because I said it. Can I say it again? Because we haven't got much time and I'm trying to go, But what I'm saying to you is, I said, just like Curtis said, it's human nature to some degree. And then I said, or human nature that's being taught to us.
But you
I
said
didn't
that
say you said
were
it.
quote you did because
Well, what did you say, Kurt?
You
Curtis, what did
started
you
you
say?
No, I
started the
didn't.
sentence.
I don't know.
I
By
didn't
saying
say you
as
said it. I
Curtis
said,
said.
no,
That's what.
Curtis.
Well, what did you say, Curtis? Because I
It
can't
doesn't
remember.
matter.
I
No,
can't
it doesn't
remember.
matter.
Curtis.
It doesn't
I
matter.
can't remember.
I haven't really said much in the whole time we've been here, to be honest. So
Well,
I wanted to
All right.
even this.
I just want to clear that up.
Simple.
I said, like you said, human nature. And
Yeah.
then when I said, oh, I'm
Also-
owning that. I'm owning that.
Okay, but it started with like Curtis said. So that's why
Yeah. Like
that's
Curtis said,
ambiguated
human
it.
nature. And
Yeah.
and then I said, oh, but I'm owning that.
Yeah,
Okay.
yeah, yeah,
And all I
yeah.
had to say is
Well,
just
makes
see
So
the
they're
sense.
balance. You
separate.
don't need to lose because I'm trying to go to my bed.
Yeah.
Mm.
Well, Curtis, let's bring you in on now. Do you think Pan-Africanism is a way to liberate us as black people globally? What do you think is a way to unify?
I don't know because I don't think like several times, like in the past, say half an hour, I've started saying like what might have been maybe a paragraph or a paragraph and a half or two, and then I get like to like three sentences, and then someone else is going around in it's their turn or whatever, and then you're talking about to me. It's like the bit of your fingernail that you cut off compared to the whole body. Because
Yeah.
I wanted to talk more about the human nature side of it, and I get that is what I was saying. But
Okay.
I did want to illustrate it, and I think it's too late now to illustrate it because I didn't really get the opportunity.
No,
Doesn't matter, we'll do
you're
it
here now.
again. We'll do it
No,
again.
no, don't worry. Just
No,
if you
no,
feel that you didn't get enough time, feel free to.
it's not that. It's just the fact that it's to me it is just like that's that much of your nail that you can cut off like that we've actually talked about when there's a whole body there. Because if you look at human nature and then you look at what we know about, survival. And
Mm,
like I said, like people's environments, which might not, but the environment you're in, not the human environment, the environment you're in,
yeah, yeah,
is
yeah.
gonna dictate like how you grow up and your children grow up and everything like that. Because of what's the resources like? Is the access to a river?
Mm,
Easily that you can easily
definitely.
get traverse or anything. Can we build bridges and all that kind of thing?
Yeah,
Do you know
no,
what I
that makes
mean?
sense.
I'd
Yeah.
like to get because don't forget, nearly all your ancestors lived in villages, and that doesn't mean some little shitty village like you get in a fairy tale. It means that
Mm,
the forest, like in Jamaica and that, when the
yeah.
forest is the farm, because you're
Mm.
growing natural shit and shit like that, like and you've got all that kind of stuff that you need. And then, but if something goes wrong in that system or something, could be a catastrophe could happen and change the whole landscape.
Kind of
And
reminds me of that Iceman Inheritance book where he's speaking on the environment of the Europeans and
well,
where,
I'm just
yeah,
saying,
yeah,
to
yeah.
me, I want to take what is in us all is our ancestors. I'm not talking about African ancestors. I'm talking about everybody's ancestors.
Just human
Everybody.
nature
Have
as a
lived
whole.
in, have managed to create villages. And
Yeah,
don't
yeah.
forget, like, so if you've got a village and it's thriving to some degree, you're going to live okay. Do you know what I mean? If you can even add to that, there's a tribe over there and they've got something we haven't got and we've got something they haven't got. Let's trade. And that's just human nature. And
So I
so when
kind
you
of get
think,
the impression what you mean is like when I was asking about Africa, so you're more like the world you need to unite.
no, no, I'm not saying the
You,
world
you,
needs to unite. I'm saying it's look, there was two things really that you would live in, a
mm,
village or a city
mm,
state, and that's
okay.
most of our ancestors. If you're in a
Yeah.
village, it depends on your status in the village because you might have been a conqueror and
Mm,
incorporated people into the village. In a city state, you're more likely to have ancestors who are royalty or generals and things like that because they got to eat to feed the kids.
okay.
Do you know what I mean?
Yeah, yeah,
Chief.
yeah.
When someone says, "Oh, such as an African chief," well, what does that mean? Do you know what I'm saying? If someone says, "Oh, someone's a chief from this part of Africa or that or whatever," that person had to somehow be a conqueror. Who were they conquering? They weren't necessarily conquering a completely outside alien force. It
There
would
was
have been people
sometimes
with.
also though where some people were elected into being chiefs
Yeah,
also,
no, no, I'm not saying they
and
did. I'm not taking that away. I'm
I
just saying
like.
you've got to remember
Mm,
people in the nature, regardless of
but that has happened. What you've just said, there's been conquerors, of course, most definitely. But
yeah,
a
yeah,
brother in Gambia, I'll just say this briefly. Brother in Gambia, who when I went to visit the Kunta Kinte tour,
yeah, yeah,
I just blatantly asked him. I said to him, you know what? Is Voldon a bad thing? I didn't know how he'd take it. You know what I mean? Because sometimes when they're into what's going on today, they can. So he basically said it was positive until the Kings made it negative. So this gave me an introduction to where corruption can, be in Africa, like or whatever it is. And he explained that Voldon was brilliant. It was a great thing. It was our connection to the creator, to nature, it was divine and all this one. But he did mention about like there was a time when the kings had less power, the chiefs had less power. Their job is to serve the people, and they could be elected out. Then somehow their power just went to the sky, where it was all about the riches. Yeah, Mansa Musa, richest man in the world. I know we heard a lot of great things about him, but to be the richest man, somebody has to have less. And I'm not going to insult him because there was some great things that he did do. He was good for the society, but at the same time, for you to have all this and everyone to have a lot less than you, then there's not a balance that's correct.
Yeah, that's kind of what I was saying, because
A fair
that's
point
just,
I'm trying to make.
it's just people do that in a small village, like a hamlet-sized place, you know, and people do it. That's why I was saying, like, tenement blocks right next to each other. There's not real animosity necessarily, but because there's like people create otherness where it doesn't really exist sometimes, or where it's like magnified way too much.
Yeah.
Because people just like your next door neighbor, you might think, oh, they're always arguing. We never argue like that. So you'll now think, oh, we're better than them just for that. Or they've got no front lawn or back lawn where you can park your car in a garage and all that. So they'll judge you on that because you haven't got, do you know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
It's
I mean,
not
for me,
so what
if
I'm
I may
saying is,
say
I'm
so.
so sorry. The reason I brought ancestors and in villages and in like city states is because that's a paradigm that you turn into a template, you overlay it, and almost every society that's ever existed goes to 80% of that template. Just because
If I
it's
may
not
say
nature.
so, if I may say so, for me, human nature is a very wide spectrum, and you have some people within that spectrum who are on a extremely high level, right? On a mystical level, otherworldly level, and you'll have some people who are in between, and you'll have some people who are at a very base level, right? So human nature is a massive thing to me. Otherwise, if human nature was all the same, I think we would be, very much behaving in a very uniform way. So there's different degrees and of human nature.
No,
Hold
because
on,
it
let me
depends
finish.
on your
Let me finish.
environment.
Huh?
You can't dictate your
Environment comes
environment.
into it because it's environmental. So the environment, but if you're forced to live in a shitty environment and you're disenfranchised and you've got no good self-image, and every time you turn on the TV it's bad self-image and all that, then that would inform you, if you're not strong enough, to stab the next guy who looks like you, who lives in the next block.
So make the
So
best out
that's
of
what
what
I'm
you
saying.
got,
For
Raz.
me,
You mean make the best
nature
of
is
the
very wide.
situation you're in? Is that what you mean?
Well,
Whatever
yeah, because
situation
we
you
all
make the
grew up
best
in a
out of it.
ghetto,
Yeah.
and there's some people who do some horrendous things, and none of us do that. So
Yeah. Make
we
the best
chose
out
not
of
to
it.
do that, and we were
Yeah.
brought up in the same conditions and the same similar environment. Can't be the same because even your next door
No, that's
neighbor.
why I gave the illustration of like first I start talking about the village and the city state. Then I talked about your next door neighbors. Because people they create difference where there's not really that much difference a lot. And then sometimes there is. But when there is, that's when you can understand why people have problems sometimes with it. Regardless of
No, I
what
can't. I
race.
hear you. No,
Yeah.
I hear you.
Do you think the
I
city's
know
become a
what you're saying.
problem? You know, going from the
issue
village
with
to
it.
the city. Do you think that become more problematic?
Sorry.
Going from
Yeah.
the villages into the
Sorry.
cities. Do you
Sorry.
think that?
Jaman,
Well,
I've got to go. I've got to get into my bed. Never mind the
Well,
city
let me
or the village.
finish off my recap. There's
Go
only
on,
me who's got
Patrick.
to answer his
Patrick.
last
Go on.
question
Go on,
about the
Patrick.
Pan-Africanism
Yeah.
and will that solve the
Yeah.
problems. I'll keep it very short because for me, touching on a bit of what Edison said and Nick said, Pan-Africanism, it's all down to, because even yourself, James, or you said, well, blah, 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 that's what it means for me. And that's the whole point of it. It means different things to different people. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Ultimately, if you took out its essence, there's obviously a lot of good that can come of it. But just like any structure, any system, any belief
I mean, if
system,
you can
any way of
unify
living.
people, I think
Yeah,
that's
let
what
me
you're
finish
getting
that.
at.
You
Yeah.
just spoke for 10 minutes. I only want 1 minute. You know what I mean? You
That
say
doesn't tax
you don't
me.
get a chance to speak, but you cut me off every time I
Nah.
speak.
Anyway, go on.
So now I've lost the point I'm making. Yeah, okay. So
Go on. You were saying about
Don't make me laugh
Pan-Africanism.
here.
I think you're
Pan-Africanism.
talking
Yeah,
about unity. If you just
Yeah,
look at it
we
from
talk
a
about
bird's eye perspective,
You
you
were
get me?
talking about Pan-Africanism and how it means different things to
No,
different people.
yeah,
yeah, yeah,
I
different
yeah,
didn't.
things
yeah,
to
yeah.
different people. Different things to different
I didn't
people.
say that. I didn't say
Not,
anything to
not
do with
you,
that.
Patrick.
Talking about me,
Patrick. Okay,
that's
go
all.
ahead.
Patrick,
If you
bro.
don't
Patrick
interrupt,
was
then this
talking.
wouldn't happen. You know what I mean? Everyone got
Go
their
on, I'm
time.
listening.
I
I'm
didn't
listening.
interrupt anyone when they were doing their. This is the closing speech, so it should
Yeah.
just be me speaking, not someone
Mm.
cutting me off
Yeah.
to interpret for myself. I'm interpreting it for
Mm.
me. I'm not telling you you're wrong or you're right. I'm saying this is what it is for me.
Yeah.
Yeah. People have different meanings to it, and
Mm.
people have different meanings to it, and within that meanings, like with anything, and different beliefs and systems of religion or societal order, people use it for their own ends and can be corrupted. But as its essence,
Yes,
it is a
yeah.
good thing. Yeah,
Mm.
it can be a good thing, but also, there's people in there who will use Pan-Africanism as a tool to then make money and manipulate and
Yeah,
say, oh
yeah.
yeah, come to Africa and do this and that and rip you off and
Yeah,
then
there's a
do
lot
this
of,
and
I know
that.
what you're saying
And
there.
then
Yeah,
there's
yeah.
people, but as
Thieves, a lot of
its
thieves, man.
essence, its
Yeah.
overall essence is yeah, it has to be a good thing because it's
The
trying
common
to
cause,
it's trying to unify people, not to think and act the same way because
yeah.
we're not robots, but to be interdependent for the good of the map for everybody. You know what I mean? And
And we
everyone
should have a
has
connection back
different
home
levels.
anyway. We should have a connection back home. But unfortunately, we've been cut off, a lot of us, because we should just be going to Africa as a regular speak. But unfortunately, we're cut off by language. We're cut off by a lot of things, basically. But there's nothing stopping us. Like, we've got Raz here, living in Rwanda. He's made that connection back home, got kids there, African wife. So you are like a great living proof example of that, Raz. So that's your living proof, and it's sometimes it takes a lot to do what you did, because sometimes there's a lot of reasons why people can't, or feel, not that they can't do it, feel they can't do what you did. And 30 years in Africa or something. I'll give you credit there, brother.
Well, just to say, right, I'm getting, it's been great, okay, and I've really enjoyed it as usual. But I am going to have to move.
No
just
problem,
to say
bro.
that I really appreciate the time and the effort put in by yourself, James, and
Please.
Curtis and Patrick and Edison or whoever joins to talk. All right.
Yeah.
I think our communication skills will improve and are improving because it is important to talk, right? But we've got one mouth and two ears, so we have to try and listen twice as much as we're talking.
Next time we'll just
myself in particular.
Yeah.
All right. So I'm going to say good night, gentlemen.
Yeah,
God
man.
bless.
Peace anyway.
Peace and love, bro.
Yeah,
bro.
Bless.
Nice
and
one,
look forward to the next discussion. And if we create more, we'll get the order right every time. Do you know what I'm saying? We'll just make sure.
It's a work in progress. It's a work in progress, man.
I was almost going to get the stopwatch out, but I thought I didn't want to have to get a stopwatch out. But
no need for that.
I was even going to do something where I said, I was speaking to tennis, saying I'm going to wave the anchor or something like that with the anchor here. Yeah, but that's your time.
No,
but
take it easy.
No, we need a chair. We need a chair, so it's all good. All good.
Well, I've enjoyed today anyway. Another good discussion. And Edison as well. Give thanks to the brother. Give thanks to yourself.
You got your
time and effort. You could just be sitting there on your couch watching TV or doing something else or whatever. So I appreciate your time because this is all contributions. It's what we need. You know what I'm saying?
Of course, bro.
So I want to give thanks to you all, man.
God bless, man.
Anyway, James Diboe discovering. Dedicated to regional peoples, man.
Busy day tomorrow, Another busy day.
Yeah, man. Next topic, I will be in touch, my brothers.
Okay. Know thyself and to my act be true.
That's it, man. Thank you very much, Raz, Patrick,
Nice one, man.
Bless up, man.
Bless.